Hello guys, welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see the what if Naruto was the illegitimate son of Yhwach, the almighty Quincy King. Check the summary in the description. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's dive into the story. Chapter 1. Reverberations of blood Konoha glowed under a midday sun, the village thriving anew after the chaos of the Fourth Great Ninja War. Scaffolding around rebuilt structures, cheerful chatter from merchants, and shinobi walking with calm confidence reflected a community moving on from tragedy. Yet, for Naruto Uzumaki, there was an undercurrent of unease running through his soul. He walked down a crowded street, hands stuffed in his pockets, gazing around at the bustle. The civilians greeted him with smiles and waves. Children mimicked his signature grin, some even sporting homemade headbands. Usually, it all filled him with warmth and pride, but not today. Something felt off. A faint buzz hammered at the back of his mind, unrelenting, like a pulse urging him toward an unknown horizon. He forced a bright grin, returning the villagers' greetings. "Hey, good morning," he called to an older gentleman who once scolded Naruto for pranks in his youth. The man beamed back. Naruto's heart squeezed with gratitude, even as the mysterious hum persisted. He had no intention of worrying the people who believed in him. Let them keep thinking he was the same old Naruto. But he knew he wasn't. A thin flicker of energy crackled at the edge of his senses. Naruto ignored for the moment and pressed on, hoping to quell the weird tension by focusing on everyday tasks. He was en route to meet Tsunade. No, Granny Tsunade wasn't the Hokage anymore. Right. Kakashi had taken up the mantle. He had to speak with the 6th Hokage about an upcoming diplomatic mission. "Yo, Naruto." A bright voice drifted from behind him. Naruto turned to see Ino Yamanaka skipping up, her purple attire swaying gracefully. She wore an energetic smile, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "You're out and about early. Any chance you can help me at the flower shop later?" Naruto put on his best playful smirk. "Work in a flower shop? Me? I might scare away the customers," he joked. Ino rolled her eyes, stepping a little too close. "Please. Everyone loves the hero of the war. I might actually see a sales spike if I advertise you behind the counter." Naruto appreciated her teasing. The old him might have flustered easily, but now, a natural confidence surged. It wasn't cockiness, just a feeling of capability that ran deeper than ever. Something that told him he could do anything, be anything. It was almost intoxicating. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of her blonde hair behind her ear, surprising them both with the familiarity of the gesture. "If you're lucky, I'll drop by," he said smoothly. Ino's cheeks tinted pink, but she smirked back. "I'll hold you to that, Uzumaki." She pivoted and dashed away, leaving Naruto with a flash of her bright grin and the faint scent of flowers. He watched her vanish around a corner, aware that her reaction had been encouraging. Not long ago, that kind of bold move might have left him red-faced. But these days, the second-guessing was gone, replaced by a near-electric surge of self-assuredness. He enjoyed it. Yet it also felt like a sign. Something within him was shifting, and not just in terms of confidence around women. His entire presence, his chakra, maybe his very essence, had changed after the war. He'd already suspected the conflict with Kagaya and meeting the Sage of Six Paths had something to do with it, but that didn't fully explain why odd, flickering glimpses of an entirely different power surfaced at random times. Naruto made his way to the Hokage's office. The building felt oddly quiet. Half the staff seemed to be out handling post-war negotiations or dealing with reconstruction efforts in other villages. He stepped through the door and found Kakashi Hitaki seated behind the desk, rummaging through papers with an exhausted slump to his shoulders. Kakashi looked up and raised a brow. "Early for once. Did someone bribe you with free ramen?" Naruto chuckled. "Nah, I'm just trying to be responsible these days. I do take my job seriously sometimes, believe it or not." A small smile creased Kakashi's masked face. "Good. Because we have a situation." He motioned Naruto closer. "Some of our sensors have reported unusual chakra signatures around the outskirts of the Land of Fire. It could be rogue shinobi. Could be something else. I'd like you to check it out." Naruto's heart gave a faint flutter. Another assignment, more potential trouble. Ordinarily, he'd be excited, But that constant pulse in his head amplified the tension. He forced himself to meet Kakashi's eye with unwavering calm. "I'll handle it, no problem." "Take a team," Kakashi suggested. "Sakura is free, Sai as well. Or pick who you trust. I don't expect anything too major, but better safe than sorry." Naruto nodded, turning to leave, but paused. The hum in his head suddenly intensified, like an urgent alarm. He frowned, glancing back at Kakashi. "You feel anything weird lately?" Kakashi's expression shifted behind the mask, pensive. "Weird, how?" Naruto struggled for words. He couldn't just tell the Hokage that he was picking up some unexplainable energy waves that didn't feel like chakra. That might sound paranoid. "Never mind. If I figure it out, I'll let you know." Kakashi nodded, though curiosity and concern flickered in his visible eye. "Stay safe out there, Naruto." Outside again, Naruto inhaled the fresh air, only to freeze when an unexpected presence stirred within him. The Nine Tails, Kurama, rumbled to life in the pit of his gut, sending a wave of hot annoyance through his veins. "You're making me uneasy, brat," Kurama growled, voice echoing in Naruto's mind. "Something about your energy is shifting." Naruto's steps slowed. Over the years, he and Kurama had developed a more cordial partnership. But the fox still had a habit of scolding him, especially when it came to changes in their shared existence. "Shifting how?" Naruto asked silently. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Kurama snarled. "It's like you're radiating an undercurrent that isn't purely chakra anymore. I don't like it. Feels foreign." Naruto frowned. The beast had once sensed the Sage of Six Paths chakra in him, but this seemed different. "I'm fine. Don't worry about it too much." Kurama snorted. Too late, and with that, he retreated, leaving Naruto more concerned than before. Late afternoon, Training Field 7 Naruto had assembled a small team for the reconnaissance mission. Sakura Haruno stood with arms folded, her pink hair tied back, expression calm yet alert. Sai hovered with his usual stoic demeanor, a faintly polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. Shikamaru had joined as well. Kakashi insisted on more experienced backup, and the lazy genius looked like he'd rather be napping. They made an odd quartet, but Naruto appreciated their presence. At least they were all people he trusted. "All right, let's go over it one more time," Shikamaru began, squinting at the map he held. "There've been chakra anomalies in a wooded region about half a day's travel from here. We'll head out, investigate, and come back. Simple." Sakura adjusted her gloves. "I'm hoping it's nothing. We could use a bit of peace." "Peace is so troublesome," Shikamaru muttered, snapping the map closed. "But sure, it'd be nice." Sai merely nodded, painting supplies tucked neatly in a pouch. "Don't worry," Naruto said, cracking his knuckles. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it. I feel like punching something anyway." He tried to sound nonchalant, but the internal buzz sparked awe. They took off in a blur of leaps, jumping from branch to branch through the forest, the wind whipping at their faces. A certain tension lay beneath the canopy, as though the wildlife itself sensed a disturbance. Birds cried out in short, nervous bursts, then went silent. Deep in the forest they reached a small clearing ringed by ancient oaks. The sunlight pierced through, giving the patch of grass an eerie, almost ethereal glow. Shikamaru signaled for them to halt, scanning the area. Sai shut his eyes momentarily. "I sense something. It's faint, like chakra but not quite." Naruto's pulse raced. He felt the same presence, like a shimmering thread in the air, tugging at his senses. Without thinking, he took a step forward, ignoring the caution in Sakura's eyes. A swirl of wind, and then a figure emerged from behind a massive trunk. Clad in tattered robes, the stranger raised an odd-looking cross pendant. His eyes gleamed with suspicion and faint surprise at seeing Naruto. "Who are you?" Sakura demanded, slipping into a defensive stance. The man's voice was a raspy whisper. "Interesting. Such potent spirit energy, here." He locked eyes with Naruto. "I never expected to find the son of." A bolt of white energy erupted from his pendant, forcing the shinobi to scatter. Naruto's reflexes kicked in. He leapt high, twisting in midair to hurl a kunai at the attacker. The robed man deflected it with a shimmering barrier. No, not a barrier. It looked like condensed spiritual particles. Sai's expression tightened as he flanked the stranger, ink beast springing from an unfurled scroll. They lunged, but another flash of that bizarre energy cut the summons to pieces. Careful, Shikamaru hissed. He formed hand seals, the shadow beneath his feet stretching out to ensnare the enemy. But just as it closed in, the robed man vanished in a blur of speed, faster than most shinobi Naruto had seen. Naruto felt an echo, a thread in his mind, an instant warning. He shifted left without knowing why, and the robed man's blade of energy, some sort of spiritual sword, sliced through empty air. If Naruto hadn't moved in that split second, the blow would have caught him square in the neck. What the? Naruto's heart hammered. He dodged on pure instinct, or maybe something more. The attacker's eyes widened in surprise. You can glimpse the flow of fate. He sounded both odd and resentful. Then the rumors are true. Yhwach's bloodline lives in you. Naruto's mind whirled. Yhwach? He'd never heard that name. Yet it ignited a weird sense of recognition deep in his gut. Kurama stirred again, growling in uncertainty. Sakura lunged, chakra-infused fist slamming down. The man evaded, barely, cracks spider webbing the ground. Shikamaru's shadow caught the edge of the man's robe, slowing him enough for Sai to unleash more ink lions. This time, the beasts pinned him momentarily. Naruto rushed forward, Rasengan swirling in his palm. He aimed straight at the stranger's chest, determined to end the confrontation quickly. The robed figure raised his cross, eyes burning with a mixture of fear and fanatic devotion. In the heartbeat before impact, Naruto glimpsed a flicker of the man's future movement, an evasive spin. Instead of hitting the chest, Naruto adjusted by an inch, driving the Rasengan into the man's shoulder. A swirl of bright chakra erupted, blasting the stranger backwards into a tree trunk. He let out a ragged cough, blood on his lips, but still managed a twisted grin. You can't run from your heritage, boy, the Quincy King, he will come for you. Quincy King? Naruto stepped closer, Rasengan dissipating. What are you talking about? The man hissed, raising his cross again, but found himself pinned under Shikamaru's stronger shadow technique. Sakura's fists clenched, frustration coloring her cheeks. Tell us exactly who you are and what you're doing in the land of fire. A choking laugh. It doesn't matter. My mission was just to confirm, I have. His eyes snapped up to Naruto. Next time, your father will. Whatever he intended to say died in his throat as his eyes rolled back. Some external force had yanked the life force from him. In an instant, the robed man's body disintegrated, dissolving into motes of pale light that vanished into the air. Sakura's jaw dropped. He just disappeared. Sai prodded the spot with a kunai. No body, no trace. Shikamaru's expression was dark. This is bad news. I can guess that wasn't ordinary ninja technique. Naruto stared at the empty patch of grass, the name, Yhwach, echoing in his head. He called me, Son of Yhwach. Any idea what that means? Shikamaru asked softly. Naruto shook his head, confusion and a strange sense of dread swirling within him. Never heard it before. But I feel like I should know. They all fell silent. The forest around them seemed eerily still, as though it, too, were processing the encounter. Naruto's instincts roiled, urging him to question everything he knew about himself. That strange power the enemy wielded. He had recognized something akin to it stirring in his own blood. Konoha. Late evening. The mission, though brief, had left them reeling. Back in the village, the team reported to Kakashi, describing the robed stranger's abilities, the mention of a Quincy King, and how the man vanished into thin air before they could interrogate him further. Kakashi listened calmly, his visible eye narrowed with concern. I've never heard of Quincy. Not in any of the war archives or intelligence from other villages. He looked at Naruto, sympathy and worry in his gaze. We'll dig into old documents, clan records, anything that might have a clue. Naruto nodded, but his thoughts were distant, drifting through the memory of the fight. How had he known to dodge that lethal strike at the last second? It felt like he saw a fragment of the future. And the robed man recognized it as glimpsing the flow of fate. As the group disbanded, Kakashi placed a reassuring hand on Naruto's shoulder. We'll figure it out. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto murmured. Naruto's apartment, the same night. He tossed and turned in bed, that pulsating hum in his skull refusing to let him rest. For a moment, he considered seeking out Kurama in his mindscape for answers, but decided against it. The fox wouldn't have any more clarity on Quincy, or Yhwach, than he did. Eventually, fatigue overcame him. He slipped into a restless slumber, images skittering through his subconscious. Flickers of battles he never fought, with men and women dressed in white, brandishing bows of pure light, leveling entire landscapes with spiritual arrows. A towering figure with a stern gaze and a jet-black mustache dominated these dreamlike scenes. He spoke with an air of absolute authority. "My son, my blood, the future is ours." Naruto jolted awake in a cold sweat, breath ragged. His heart pounded, body trembling from the vividness of the dream. The voice lingered, echoing in his ears even though he was awake. He stared out the window at the moonlit village. What the hell? Despite the fear, a small spark of determination flared in his chest. He refused to let this break him. Whatever Yhwach was, Naruto would find out, and if that meant facing this so-called Quincy King, so be it. Dawn training grounds sleep had barely come, and morning arrived too soon. Exhausted or not, Naruto found himself at the training fields before sunrise, seeking distraction. Physical exertion always cleared his head. His body hummed with energy the moment he attempted to mold chakra. Instead of the usual swirl of warm power, there was a faint overlay of something sharper. A different resonance that seemed to pulse with each beat of his heart. He formed a basic Rasengan in his palm, watching it spin with compressed chakra. Then, unbidden, a swirl of silvery white flickered around the orb, crackling with his eyes widened. The power threatened to shift the Rasengan's shape, as if trying to transform it. He steadied his breathing, trying to maintain control. The ordinary Rasengan flickered back into its familiar blue glow. His heart thumped hard, but he felt no fatigue. Actually, he felt stronger. "What in the world?" he whispered. Without warning, a presence appeared behind him. He spun to see none other than Hinata Hyuga, softly approaching with concern written on her face. Her Byakugan wasn't active, but she clearly sensed his chakra fluctuations. "Naruto-kun, are you all right?" she asked in that gentle tone of hers. He forced a grin, letting the Rasengan fade. "Yeah, just training." She walked closer, the morning light casting a soft glow across her pale eyes. "Your chakra is different. I can see it even without Byakugan. Is there something you need to tell me?" Naruto exhaled, leaning against a post. It felt heavy to unload so soon, but Hinata was one of the few people he trusted implicitly. "I had a weird dream. And we ran into a strange guy yesterday who said something about me being the son of Yhwach. Ever hear of that name?" She shook her head, eyes full of worry. "No, I haven't. But I can help if you let me." Her genuine concern made his heart twinge. For a brief moment, he considered just hugging her, burying his stress in that kindness. But something else inside him, that new wave of confidence, wanted more, a deeper connection. He stepped forward, brushing the back of his fingers gently against her cheek. Hinata's eyes widened in a mixture of surprise and a flush of pink. Naruto moved closer, mouth curving in a soft smile. "You're always so kind to me. Thank you." Then, he bent down and pressed a light kiss to her lips, a lingering contact that sent a jolt of warmth through them both. Hinata's eyes fluttered closed for half a second in shock before she responded, breath hitching as their lips met. Her cheeks flamed bright red when he finally pulled away. She stared at him, almost disbelieving. "And Naruto-kun." He gently rested a hand on her shoulder. "I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you, and how grateful I am." She swallowed, struggling to form words, then nodded with a trembling smile. "I'm here, whatever you need." A part of Naruto felt a flash of guilt. He knew her heart was tender, and the last thing he wanted was to toy with her feelings. Still, the moment felt right. And that new boldness within him pressed him onward, telling him to seize what life offered without fear. Mid-morning Konoha library word of the strange attacker had spread quietly among the upper ranks. Kakashi authorized a discreet search of old records in the Konoha library. Shikamaru and Sakura helped with the more bureaucratic side, leaving Naruto free to roam the shelves for anything referencing Yhwach or Quincy. He found a lonely corner stacked with ancient scrolls, many from outside the Land of Fire. The texts were dusty and half-decayed. As he searched, A second presence arrived. Ino, of all people. She carried a small basket of daisies, likely from her family shop. And her blue-green eyes lit up when she spotted him. Looking for something top secret? She teased, setting the basket aside. Naruto ran a hand through his hair. Maybe. I'm trying to find any record of someone called Yhwach, or something called Quincy. Ino cocked an eyebrow and slid in next to him, scanning the scrolls. Never heard of them. Let's see what we've got. They combed through references to old clans, obscure jutsu, and legends from other lands. While Naruto pieced through a fragile parchment describing historical conflicts, Ino read over his shoulder, leaning in so close he could feel the warmth of her breath. She eventually huffed. Nothing. It's all just references to the Warring States era, or alliances we made with smaller nations. Zero mention of Yhwach or a clan called Quincy. Naruto sighed, frustration gnawing at him. Figures. Ino tapped a finger against his arm. Are you okay? You look tense. He shrugged, turning to face her. A lot on my mind, that's all. Feels like there's something inside me I can't pin down. It's kinda messing with my head. Ino studied his expression, then slid her hand up to his shoulder in a reassuring gesture. Well, I know a few ways to calm a busy mind, she said, half playful, half concerned. Naruto's lips twitched into a smirk. Oh yeah? Mind telling me about them? Her eyes sparkled mischievously. I could, or I could just show you. For a moment, the tension dissipated. Naruto, drawn in by the gentle confidence in her tone, found himself leaning closer. Ino tilted her head, and before he realized it, their mouths connected in a quick, daring kiss. The library's quiet was almost comical against the flutter in his chest. When they broke apart, Ino's cheeks flushed. She tried to maintain her usual boldness, though a slight quiver in her voice betrayed her own rush of excitement. That might help you relax a bit. Naruto exhaled a short laugh, heart-pounding. The mix of curiosity, desire, and genuine fondness for his friends created a tumult of emotions. He realized, with an odd certainty, that this newfound boldness was fueling these moments, removing the hesitation he might have once felt. His thoughts whirled. He'd just kissed Hinata that morning and now Ino, too. He cared for them both, and there was a certain thrill in testing the boundaries of these relationships. Could it really be all right? He heard footsteps in the distance, and they sprang apart before being caught in a very un-library-like embrace. Ino coughed, fiddling with her hair. Well, we should probably keep looking. Naruto forced himself to refocus. Right, let's do that. Yet the puzzling question remained unsolved. No mention of Quincy or Yhwach in these records. Wherever this mysterious lineage came from, it might be older or more far-reaching than any known shinobi clan. After noon Ichiraku ramen, his fruitless library search only sharpened his restlessness, so Naruto sought the comfort of ramen. He slid onto a stool at the familiar stand, greeting Tuchi and Ayame with a half-smile. But even the aroma of miso ramen, usually enough to banish all troubles, couldn't quell the unsettled feeling in his gut. He had barely finished half a bowl when a surge of chakra washed over him. A moment later, a swirl of dust and leaves outside the ramen stand heralded the arrival of Temari, the Sunakunoichi visiting for diplomatic talks. She pushed aside the curtain, stepping in as if on a mission. There you are, she said, tone clipped but not unkind. Her teal eyes locked onto him. I've been looking all over. Kakashi said you might be here. Naruto wiped his mouth, turning on the stool. What's up? Temari huffed. We just got word from the cage. He wants to confirm the details of a rumored new threat. Something about an unknown force near our borders. She took in his uneasy expression. You okay? He set his chopsticks aside. I'm dealing with some personal mysteries, but I'm fine. Let's walk. They left the ramen stand, strolling down Konoha's busy street. Temari explained the rumor. Sightings of robed figures with strange powers near the border between wind and fire. It matched the pattern Naruto had encountered. We need any intel you have, Temari said, tone serious. We can't afford another crisis. Naruto grimaced. We don't have much yet. I ran into one of them, but he disintegrated before telling us anything useful. Temari frowned, glancing sidelong at him. Disintegrated? Yeah, Naruto said, noticing her disbelief. His body turned to spiritual particles or something. Temari looked wary. And you think they might be after you specifically? He rubbed the back of his neck. That's the impression I got, but I don't know why. They paused in a quieter sector to face him, crossing her arms. Well, you'd better figure it out, hero. If they threaten the shinobi world, you won't be dealing with it alone. She studied him a moment, eyes softer. Don't shoulder everything yourself. Naruto gave a grateful nod. He always respected Temari's level-headedness. In that moment, he recognized she was also quite striking, confident, strong, and sure of herself. The corners of his mouth tugged up in a teasing grin. Appreciate the concern, he said, stepping into her personal space. Temari's eyes narrowed, a flicker of confusion and challenge crossing her features. You're acting different lately. More direct. He shrugged, leaning in slightly. You don't like it? Her lips parted in a slight smirk. I didn't say that. Acting on the impulse that had been guiding him all day, Naruto let his hand rest lightly at her waist, pulling her closer. Temari stiffened for a second, but didn't pull away. Perhaps it was the tension from the potential threat, or the rush of adrenaline from the conversation, but Naruto found himself leaning in, testing the line between them. Her face flushed. You're incorrigible, this is hardly the place. He tilted his head, brushing his mouth against hers in a brief but undeniable kiss. She responded with a quiet noise of surprise, then parted slightly, blinking. A moment passed, electric, before she slid a hand up his chest and pushed him back, gently, but firmly. You really are full of surprises, she murmured, glancing around to ensure they weren't being watched. Her cheeks were warm, but she wore a half-smile that betrayed intrigue rather than anger. Naruto grinned, stepping back. Sorry if I crossed a line. Temari shook her head, turning away with a small huff. We'll revisit that, later. For now, get me any information that can help Suna. Understand? He gave a mock salute. Yes, ma'am. And just like that, Temari departed, leaving Naruto in a swirl of conflicting emotions. Part excitement, part confusion. Hinata, Ino, Temari, he was walking a tricky path, but a part of him enjoyed it. The weight of the unexplained power in his blood felt more bearable, buffered by these growing connections. Twilight mindscape unable to ignore the internal dissonance any longer, Naruto settled on the floor of his apartment and closed his eyes, slipping into his mindscape to confront Kurama. He found the giant fox curled up behind the heavy bars, though over time those bars had become more symbolic than literal. Back again, brat? Kurama rumbled. Naruto folded his arms. We need to talk. You've been quiet since yesterday. You said my energies change. Kurama shifted, opening one great crimson eye. It has. Your chakra is tainted by something else. Not malicious, exactly, but not of this world either. Not of this world, Naruto repeated, unsettled by the phrase. You mean, like, an otherworldly clan? Like the Otsutsuki or something? Kurama let out a heavy snort. No, this is different. The Otsutsuki used chakra. What you're dabbling in, I sense no chakra from it at all. It's a separate power that manipulates the essence of life. Naruto's skin prickled. That guy in the forest mentioned something about fate. Said I inherited it from my father, Yhwach. Kurama's ears flattened. Then perhaps you're dealing with a being who can influence the flow of time and possibility. I don't know more than that, but your power is amplifying, merging with mine. Don't expect me to be thrilled about it. Naruto paced. Then are we good? Or are you going to freak out if it changes us both? The fox bared its teeth slightly. Listen well, brat. I won't let you destroy me or yourself. If this power threatens my survival, I'll fight you from within if I must. But for now, we'll watch and see. An uneasy truce, indeed. Naruto couldn't blame Kurama for being cautious. Heck, he was cautious, too. All right, he said softly. We'll figure it out together. Late night Naruto's apartment worn from the day's revelations and the swirl of romantic entanglements. Naruto turned in for the night. He tried to center himself, ignoring the persistent pulse in his mind. The moment he drifted off, a dream claimed him again. He stood in a grand, snow-white hall, pillars of pale stone rising around him. Quincy crosses decorated every surface, pulsing with faint bluish light. At the far end of the hall, the tall silhouette appeared, wearing long black robes adorned with a menacing symbol. A thick mustache framed an intense mouth. The figure's eyes glowed with uncanny power, reminiscent of distant galaxies swirling in black pools. "My son." The voice echoed, each word resonating like an incantation. "I've waited for you to awaken. Inherit the throne that is rightfully yours." Naruto tried to speak, but the air felt thick. He could only watch as the figure advanced, the halls reverberating with each step. "All that I see, all possible futures, shall bend to our will," the man continued. "You, with my blood, possess the power to reshape destinies. The shinobi world, soul society, every realm will recognize our dominance. Join me, and claim your birthright." A wave of energy crashed through the hall. Naruto clenched his teeth, defiance flaring. He had no intention of conquering worlds or bending them to his will. That wasn't who he was. Yet, despite his determination, a flicker of curiosity burned within him. This power, the Almighty, could it truly see and alter futures? He remembered how easily he dodged that lethal attack in the forest, as though guided by a glimpse of the immediate future. "I'm not your puppet," Naruto spat in the dream, forcing himself to speak. "I won't serve anyone." The man's lips curled into a cold half-smile. "We shall see. My blood runs in your veins, child. There is no escape from fate." A deafening crash shattered the dreamscape. Naruto jerked awake, chest heaving, sweat clinging to his forehead. He sat upright in bed, fists clenched. He whispered the name. "Yhwach." Lightning flashed outside his window, a storm rolling in over Konoha. Rain began to patter against the glass. Naruto felt an unshakable certainty that the storm was just a preview of what lay ahead. Next morning, Hokage's office. Despite the hour, the sky was still dark with lingering clouds. Naruto, Sakura, Ino, and Shikamaru gathered in Kakashi's office. Temari was there too, arms crossed, wearing a stern expression. They all looked on edge. Kakashi placed a single scroll on his desk. "We found this in the Uzumaki clan's sealed archives. It was preserved in a small shrine near the old ruins of Uzushio. Our scouts recovered it just hours ago. It might be a clue." Naruto leaned in as Kakashi carefully unrolled the parchment, revealing archaic script and faint sketches. Shikamaru squinted at the scribbles. "That language is old, possibly older than the founding of the 5 great shinobi nations." Sakura traced a finger along a stylized symbol resembling a cross. "This shape, could it be related to the cross that robed man carried?" Kakashi nodded. "It's a possibility. The text references a tribe or clan that manipulated spiritual energy, separate from chakra. They were known for their ability to draw power from the very fabric of the world. Reishi. They used bows and arrows made of pure spirit particles, calling themselves Quincy." Ino exchanged a quick look with Naruto. "So it's true," she murmured. "They aren't just random cultists." Kakashi continued. "The scroll mentions a Quincy leader who was said to see all possible futures. It doesn't name him, but I'd bet my mask he's the Yhwach you encountered in your dreams, Naruto." Temari pressed her lips together. "So they may date back even before chakra was widely used among shinobi." Naruto stared at the ancient cross symbol on the scroll. "The hair on the back of his nekili is my father. How the hell did that happen? My mother was Kushina Uzumaki, right? And my father was Minato Namikaze, or so I've always believed." The room fell silent. Sakura frowned sympathetically. "Naruto, it could be something complicated. Maybe your mother never told anyone. Or maybe Yhwach manipulated something at the time of your birth." Kurama's voice rumbled in Naruto's mind. "More likely he planted his essence in you while you were still forming, to eventually claim you as his successor." Naruto gritted his teeth, frustration mounting. "So what? I'm just the byproduct of some experiment? A seed left behind by this, Yhwach?" Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "We don't know the full story yet. But one thing's clear. These Quincy are coming for you. Or at least, they want to confirm your existence. We have to be prepared." Naruto forced a deep breath, meeting everyone's eyes. "All right. Let them come. I'm not going to roll over. We'll get to the bottom of this." Temari nodded. "Agreed." Sakura set her jaw. "We'll stand with you, Naruto." A murmur of agreement passed through the group. Naruto's chest tightened with both gratitude and lingering anxiety. The path ahead was murky at best. That evening in the streets of Konoha storm clouds had cleared, leaving behind a starry sky. The air was cool, faint lantern light illuminating the village. Despite the tension, Konoha's life went on. Shops bustled, families strolled, shinobi exchanged greetings in the streets. Naruto took a winding path home, lost in thought. His mind kept replaying the Quincy relic images and the dreamlike encounters with Yhwach. A swirl of energy seemed to lodge in his gut, telling him that this was only the beginning. He paused by a small bridge, gazing at the moonlit water below. Footsteps approached from behind. Sakura. She came to stand beside him, resting her arms on the railing. "You okay?" she asked softly. Naruto stared at his reflection in the rippling water. "Not sure. My whole life, I thought I knew who I was. Then this, Son of Yhwach, thing. Maybe I'm not who I believed I was." Sakura placed a comforting hand on his arm. "You're still Naruto Uzumaki. You saved the village. No, the whole shinobi world. You have countless friends and people who respect you." Her earnest gaze made his chest tighten with emotion. He turned slightly, capturing her hand in his. "Thanks, Sakura-chan." She offered a gentle smile, then her eyes flicked away, a soft pink dusting her cheeks. I heard from Hinata that you two had a moment," she said, voice awkward. "And I also saw Ino earlier. She was practically glowing. Or you?" Naruto's stomach twisted. He realized Sakura was hinting at his multiple romantic connections. Guilt and a bit of excitement rushed him. "I know it's weird. I care about all of you. My heart feels torn, but at the same time, I can't deny what I feel." Sakura's eyes flicked down, then back up. "You're bold, Naruto. And a bit of a handful," she teased gently. "Don't expect me to just sit on the sidelines, though." She stepped in close. There was a slight tremble in her breath, but her resolve was clear. Naruto's heart pounded as her hand slid up his chest, her emerald eyes locked on his. He hesitated. This was Sakura, the girl he'd chased for so long but never quite reached, until now. He leaned down, capturing her mouth in a kiss that started soft but deepened quickly. She pressed closer, hands twisting in his jacket. A wave of warmth flooded Naruto's veins, tangling with that ever-present hum of foreign power. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and comforting all at once. They finally broke apart, breath mingling in the cool night air. Sakura's cheeks were bright red, but she held his gaze. "Guess we'll figure this out together," she whispered. Naruto grinned, his own face warm. "Yeah." And in that fleeting moment of closeness, he felt the faint hum recede, as though soothed by connection rather than overshadowed by it. Maybe that was the key, balancing his newfound power with genuine bonds. If Yhwach intended to pull him toward a destiny of dominance, Naruto would push back with everything he had, wielding the strength of the relationships he'd forged. Near midnight edge of Konoha's silhouettes drifted at the boundary wall, 3 figures wrapped in pale cloaks trimmed with cross symbols. Their forms blurred with faint flickers of spiritual energy, invisible to most shinobi. One figure lifted a hand, pointing toward the center of the sleeping village. "He's here," whispered a female voice, laced with a note of excitement. "The Son of Yhwach. He's awakened." The second figure spoke, voice cold. "Then we verify his loyalty or end him. The king awaits." A third presence, silent until now, turned slightly, unveiling a stern set of eyes. "Yes. We must see if he is the prophesied heir. Prepare yourselves." With that, they vanished into the night, leaving only a subtle shift in the air. Naruto's apartment. Same time Naruto stirred restlessly in his sleep, the whisper of footsteps on distant rooftops barely registering at the edge of his senses. The hidden threads of fate curled around him, and far beyond, the mightiest Quincy in existence loomed, calling to his blood. It had begun. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Spirits of the Cross. Thunder rolled in the distance as dawn broke over Konoha. The remnants of last night's storm still lingered, leaving a haze of mist drifting through the streets. Naruto Uzumaki awoke in his apartment, tension humming through his veins. Sleep had been fragmented by flashes of that white-walled fortress, echoes of a man's resounding voice. It all pointed to one name, Yhwach. He pushed aside the sheets and stood, eyes traveling over the faint reflection of himself in the window. He could feel a glimmer of unfamiliar energy threading through his body. It was subtle yet powerful, influencing his instincts, his reflexes, even the way he carried himself. The previous day's events had proven that whatever lay inside him was very real. He shook off the lingering nightmares, grabbed a quick shower, and set out, determined to continue the search for answers. No matter what this Quincy lineage meant, he wouldn't let it dictate his choices. Morning Konoha streets, citizens bustled around in their daily routines. Chatter and the clatter of carts filled the air as shops opened and shinobi patrolled. Naruto navigated the crowd with purposeful strides. He noticed more than a few heads turn in greeting, but his focus was elsewhere. Something felt off, like a layer of tension blanketing the village. He spotted Sakura waiting by the fountain in the center of town, arms folded. Her gaze flicked up when she sensed his approach, and she smiled, though concern shadowed her eyes. "Morning, Naruto," she said softly. He nodded, stepping closer. "Any news from Kakashi-sensei?" She tucked a strand of pink hair behind her ear. "Not much," he said, to gather at the Hokage's office soon. "There's been a sighting of suspicious individuals near the perimeter. They match the description of that robed man." Naruto's pulse quickened. "So they're here?" "Yes," Sakura confirmed, voice grim. "I'm worried they could do something drastic." They fell into step together. Sakura brushed her hand against his, a quiet reassurance that cut through the tension. He squeezed her fingers gently, not caring who in the street might notice. She went a little pink at the contact. "So, about last night." Naruto shot her a small, wry smile. "We'll figure it out." Her lips curved as she nodded. They didn't say more, but the conversation from the night before, and the kiss they'd shared, buzzed between them, unspoken yet powerful. Hokage's office. The office was more crowded than usual. Shikamaru stood beside Kakashi, scanning a sheaf of documents. Sai and Ino lingered to one side. Ino's expression. Mari leaned against the wall with arms crossed, head angled in quiet thought. Kakashi glanced up at Naruto and Sakura's entrance. "Good timing. We've just gotten word from the patrols along Konoha's perimeter. Multiple figures wearing those white-trimmed robes were sighted around midnight. They vanished before anyone could engage." Shikamaru let out a low sigh. "Troublesome. They're definitely scoping us out. This is more organized than just one rogue man." Naruto folded his arms. "We can't just wait for them to strike. Let's go meet them head on." Kakashi's expression was calm but grave. "We will, but strategically. Rushing in blind might jeopardize the village. Besides, I'm not sure of their numbers or whether more are on the way." Ino shifted her weight, flipping a strand of blonde hair over her shoulder. "We should also consider whether they plan to abduct Naruto. If they think he's crucial to their cause." Naruto felt a wave of frustration at the reminder that he was their target. He forced a reassuring grin. "If they come for me, I'll be ready." Sai spoke up quietly. "I can use my ink clones to set up a network around the outskirts. We'll know if they try to sneak in again." Kakashi nodded. "Good. Sakura, Ino, help coordinate with the hospital staff in case of civilian injuries. Shikamaru and Temari, stay on standby with a quick response team." Temari's eyes flicked toward Naruto. "And you?" Naruto clenched his fists. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect Konoha. If that means confronting them, count me in." Kakashi's gaze met Naruto's with a hint of concern. "We'll use you as bait if it comes to that. But I don't want to risk a direct confrontation until we know more." He cleared his throat. "For now, keep your senses sharp and stay within the village. If these Quincy want to test you, let them make the first move." Naruto reluctantly agreed. "Right. Midday training field." By the time noon rolled around, Naruto's restlessness had grown. He retreated to one of the training fields to blow off steam. There, Hinata was already practicing gentle fist techniques. She offered him a small wave as he approached. "Hey, Hinata," he called. She paused, turning to face him. Her expression lit with affection, though an undercurrent of worry lingered. "Naruto-kun, how are you holding up?" He let out a long breath. "I'm trying to keep it together, but all these mysteries are piling up. Figured I'd train a bit." They exchanged a few words, then Hinata offered to spar. Naruto accepted, hoping some physical exertion would quiet the thoughts swirling in his head. They took positions opposite each other, each adopting a fighting stance. At Hinata's, Byakugan, activate, her pupils vanished into milky orbs. She glided in with palm strikes that Naruto dodged or parried. He found himself reading the subtle shifts of her body more clearly than usual, like a new sense guiding him. She pivoted, chakra gathering in her fingertips. Naruto recognized the beginnings of her 8 trigrams technique. The old him would have braced for a barrage of strikes, but a fleeting image flashed in his mind. A flicker of the next 2 seconds. He saw the angle of her assault, saw where he needed to move. He sidestepped almost too smoothly, leaving Hinata blinking in surprise. That was an impressive dodge, she said, flushing slightly. Naruto slowed, a chill in his veins. The brief future sight had surfaced again. His heart thumped in excitement and alarm. Hinata, he said, there's something I need to tell you. I think I can see glimpses of what's about to happen in a fight. She deactivated the Byakugan, stepping closer with concern etched in her features. Is this the Quincy power? He ran a hand through his hair. I guess so. It happened when we fought that robed guy, too. I can't explain it. It's like I catch a fraction of the future. It's unsettling. She reached out, placing a gentle hand over his. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. He exhaled, searching her face. Hinata's steady support cut through some of his anxiety. His thoughts flicked to the kiss they shared the day before. Before he knew it, he'd leaned in, pressing his forehead lightly against hers. Her cheeks warmed, but she didn't pull away. Naruto-kun. He let the tension unravel with a slow exhale. In the hush of the training field, with only the sounds of rustling leaves and distant birds, he brushed his lips to hers. A tender kiss, sweet, lingering, but not timid. She returned it, leaning in with a quiet, trembling sigh. They parted, foreheads still touching. A shy, happy glint danced in her eyes. I'm with you, she whispered. Always. Naruto smiled. Thanks, Hinata. Late afternoon tense encounter. While he cooled down from training, Naruto sensed an odd shift in the ambient energy around the village. He froze, scanning the horizon. The typical flow of chakra from Konoha's inhabitants was there, but something else threaded through it. A faint, pulsing signature that felt foreign. He hurried toward one of the outer walls, following the strange energy. The sky was still bright, though clouds gathered again in the distance. As he approached a deserted corner near the perimeter, he caught the flicker of a white cloak disappearing behind a storage shed. His pulse pounded. They're here. Without waiting for backup, he dashed ahead, rounding the corner in a burst of speed. 2 robed figures stood in the alley. One was tall and lean, with short, silvery hair tied back, while the other was shorter and wore a hood pulled low over their eyes. Both radiated that same spiritual force he'd felt from the attacker in the forest. They turned sharply at his arrival. The tall one's gaze locked onto him, eyes narrowing as if appraising prey. So, it's true. He's awakened to his power. Naruto set his stance, fists clenched. Who are you people, and what do you want with me? The hooded figure lifted a cross-shaped pendant. We come to confirm the rumors, that Yhwach's blood flows in a shinobi. A hint of contempt underlined their voice. It's an abomination. Naruto's temper flared. Abomination? I didn't ask for this, you know. The taller Quincy sneered. Our king doesn't suffer half-breeds lightly, but if you truly possess the Almighty, you may be of use to him. A swirl of spiritual particles coalesced in the robed man's hand, forming a longbow of bluish-white light. He drew back an arrow of pure reishi. Show us what you can do, Son of Yhwach. Naruto felt a shock at the term, Son of Yhwach. The memory of the dream replayed in his head. Anger and confusion fused in his chest. Don't call me that, he snarled. The Quincy fired. In the span of a heartbeat, Naruto glimpsed the arrow's path slicing through the air. Another split-second future flash warned him it would tear through his side if he stood still. He twisted, letting the arrow skim past, shattering a crate behind him. Heat roiled in his veins. He formed a Rasengan in one palm, the other hand crackling with an odd silver glow. The bow-wielding Quincy's eyes flickered with interest at the swirling energy. Chakra, and something else. The hooded figure also raised a reishi bow. 2 arrows soared in tandem. Naruto gritted his teeth, weaving through their arc with preternatural agility. Each successful dodge felt guided by that new sense, as if a ghostly hand pulled him out of harm's way. Naruto closed the distance in a burst of speed, Rasengan blazing. The Quincy managed to summon a barrier of spirit particles just in time, but the force of Naruto's strike cracked the barrier, sending the tall man skidding backward. The hooded one, now behind Naruto, hurled another arrow. He glimpsed the next moment. A lethal projectile headed for his spine. He pivoted on pure reflex, channeling chakra into his palm to bat the arrow away, though it scorched his skin on contact. The tall Quincy St mingling with disdain. You can see the future in fragments, can't you? Already tasting the almighty. I don't care what you call it, Naruto shot back. Leave Konoha alone. Huh. As if we'd simply walk away, the man said, forming two more shimmering arrows. We need to see if you're worthy of father's acceptance, or if you should be culled. The words triggered a renewed rush of anger. Naruto felt a swirl of foreign power press at the edges of his consciousness, pushing to manifest. Without fully understanding it, he let it flow into his hand. A faint glow flared around his fingertips, and out of that haze, a small bow of his own began to take shape, a swirling manifestation of reishi combined with traces of his chakra. The Quincy stiffened in shock. Impossible. Naruto aimed on instinct, pulling back a string made of intangible light. A moment later, a shimmering arrow fired, colliding with the twin arrows the enemy had launched. The resulting explosion of spiritual energy rattled the alley, kicking up dust and debris. Naruto staggered at the drain of that power, the ephemeral bow flickering in and out of existence. He didn't have the technique down yet, it was pure improvisation. But the Quincy clearly recognized it and looked rattled. The hooded figure barked a command to the tall man. We have confirmation. Retreat for now. Naruto lunged, not wanting them to escape without answers, but his own brief mastery of the reishi bow left him momentarily winded. The Quincy vanished in a ripple of spiritual distortion, leaving behind only swirling motes of light. He stood there panting, surrounded by dust, fury boiling in his gut. His mind spun. He'd just formed a Quincy bow. The last remnants of that shimmering energy still tingled against his palm. Damn it, he growled, slamming a fist against the wall. Moments later, arrival of allies Sakura and Shikamaru hurried onto the scene, alerted by the commotion. Ino and Sai arrived shortly after, followed by a team of shinobi. They found Naruto leaning against a broken crate, breathing heavily. Sakura rushed forward, scanning him for injuries. Are you hurt? Naruto waved her off, frustration evident in his voice. I'm okay. Shikamaru glanced around at the cratered walls and scorch marks. They got away? Yeah, Naruto muttered. Two of them. They have the same powers as that robed guy from before. Ino placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, her brow furrowed with concern. You sure you're not injured? You're shaking. He forced a shaky exhale. I'm just pissed they slipped away, and I used some kind of Quincy ability. At that, everyone froze. Sakura's eyes went wide. You manifested a bow? Naruto nodded reluctantly. It only lasted a second, but I definitely felt it. Like I was tapping into a part of me I've never used before. A solemn silence fell. Shikamaru finally broke it. Let's get back to the Hokage's office. We need a plan. Hokage's office emergency meeting back in the familiar room. Everyone wore tense expressions. Kakashi leaned over his desk, listening as Naruto recounted the confrontation. The mention of his newly manifested bow made the sixth Hokage's brow crease with worry. You're certain it was a reishi bow? Kakashi asked, exchanging a glance with Shikamaru. Naruto stared at the floor. It wasn't chakra. It felt different. The Quincy recognized it immediately. They said they had confirmation. Kakashi let out a slow breath. It's likely that they're reporting to Yhwach himself, or whoever commands them. If so, they'll come back, possibly in greater force. Ino's gaze darted between them. What if we track them down first? They're clearly a threat to the village, and we can't wait around. Shikamaru rubbed the back of his neck. We don't have enough data. We don't know their base of operations or how many they number. Tamari, who had remained silent thus far, spoke up. We might work with Suna's intelligence units to keep an eye out beyond the borders. If these Quincy are roaming other lands, someone might have spotted them. Kakashi nodded. Good idea. I'll dispatch teams to gather intel. Meanwhile, Naruto, we need to see if you can learn to control these powers. If you can at least wield them at will, you won't be taken by surprise. Naruto looked conflicted. I never asked to be half, whatever they say I am. But if it helps protect everyone, I'll do it. Sai shifted, eyes flicking to Ino. We'll support you, whatever it takes. Sakura placed a hand on Naruto's arm. Be careful. These abilities aren't like anything we've studied before. Temari tapped her fan lightly against her shoulder. You'll need training, but who's going to teach you? Not like we have Quincy instructors on hand. Naruto managed a grim smile. I guess I'll have to wing it. It's not like that's new for me. Nightfall. Naruto's apartment. The day had been one endless storm of tension and planning. Now, with darkness settled over Konoha, Naruto felt an urgent need to figure out this strange power before more Quincy scouts appeared. He lit a single lamp in his apartment's small living space, then sat cross-legged in the center, trying to recall the sensation of forming that bow. He focused on his breathing, letting his chakra flow naturally. A swirl of familiar energy rose in his chest. Usually, that was enough to shape clones or Rasengan. But now, he probed deeper, seeking that sharper pulse hidden beneath. He found a faint ripple, a distinct thrumming that answered his call. Slowly, a faint line of light formed above his open palms. His heart kicked. He imagined drawing an invisible bowstring. The line extended, shaping into something akin to the form he'd conjured earlier in the alley. The air crackled with tension. But holding it strained him. The bow flickered unsteadily, as if fighting him. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He gritted his teeth, trying to maintain the flow. A sudden wave of dizziness hit. He lost his concentration, and the bow vanished like a snuffed candle flame. Breathing heavily, he leaned forward. It felt like trying to combine oil and water. His chakra and Quincy power resisted blending. Kurama stirred inside him, sending a reverberation through his mind. You're forcing it, brat. Let the energies align naturally. Naruto grimaced. That's easier said than done. They don't want to mix. The fox's voice rumbled. One day, you might have to choose between them. Chakra and Reishi might not be able to coexist at full strength. Naruto scowled. They'll coexist if I want them to. I'm not giving up either side. Kurama went quiet, though Naruto felt a ripple of grudging respect. Exhausted, Naruto blew out the lamp and flopped onto his bed, mind still spinning. He dreamed again of that white fortress, Yhwach's voice echoing. The future bends to my will. Embrace your destiny. Early morning marketplace. Despite the upheaval, life in Konoha pressed on. Naruto walked through the marketplace, searching for breakfast. Though he tried to project confidence, the tension in his shoulders never eased. He caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Ino behind a small stall, rearranging flower bouquets. She waved him over with a bright smile. Hey, hero, you look hungry. Naruto gave a short laugh, stepping up to her stall. That obvious? She handed him a small bundle of steamed buns. Breakfast, on me. He felt a rush of gratitude. Thanks. I appreciate it. Ino leaned on the counter, eyes flicking around to ensure no one was too close. Any progress with that new power? He blew out a breath. Not really. I can summon it for a moment, but controlling it is another story. She studied him for a quiet beat. You know you don't have to do it alone, right? We all want to help. Naruto reached out and cupped her chin with a gentle touch, scanning her face. I know. You've done so much already. She slid around the counter, grabbing his arm to tug him behind a display of tall plants, momentarily hiding them from prying eyes. Before he could ask what she was doing, she pressed her lips to his in a warm kiss. She parted with a quiet gasp, color high in her cheeks. Just, you know, a little boost. For luck or something. Despite everything weighing on him, Naruto smirked. Thanks, I'll use that luck well. She gave a playful push. All right, get going before someone sees us. I've got customers coming. He chuckled, stepping back into the bustling market, the taste of the kiss lingering. The swirling conflicts of his heritage, the looming Quincy threat, all of it felt momentarily lighter. Shortly after meeting at the gates, Kakashi had arranged a small training session for Naruto at one of the secure fields near the village gates. Sakura, Sai, and Shikamaru were present to observe and offer tactical advice. The sun burned high overhead, and the air was thick with summer heat. Kakashi gestured for Naruto to stand in the clearing. Try to replicate whatever you did last night. Summon that bow. Naruto nodded, took a steadying breath, and closed his eyes. He pictured the intangible bow in his hands, recalled the tingling rush of Reishi. Slowly, a faint line of light pulsed into view, forming a translucent arc. Sakura watched wide-eyed. It's really happening. Sai ready to scroll in case something went wrong. Shikamaru folded his arms, quietly assessing. Naruto drew the bowstring, focusing on shaping an arrow. It flickered into existence, a small projectile of pale energy. He aimed at a training dummy set up a few dozen yards away. For a moment, he sensed the future flicker again. The path of the arrow, the potential ways it could go wrong. He exhaled and released. The arrow zipped forward, striking the target's shoulder. The dummy burst apart with surprising force, scattering straw. Naruto's eyes widened in triumph, but the bow dissolved instantly, leaving him panting. He stumbled slightly. Sakura dashed over to support him. "You okay?" He nodded, catching his breath. "Yeah, just drains me." Kakashi tapped his chin thoughtfully. "You formed a single arrow, but it clearly did some damage. If you can master this, it might be a powerful weapon." Shikamaru scratched his head. "But you'll have to learn how to maintain it in real combat, probably with multiple arrows." Naruto shoved sweat-damp hair off his forehead, one step at a time. Just as they were wrapping up, Temari arrived from a side path, waving a messenger scroll. Her expression was grim. "We've intercepted intel about robed figures along the western route. They're definitely Quincy. My guess is they're testing the perimeter." Kakashi's gaze darkened. "They're moving quickly. We need to be ready for an incursion." Temari looked at Naruto, then at the shredded dummy. She recognized the remaining swirl of reishi in the air and raised her brows. "Looks like you're making progress." Naruto nodded, tamping down the surge of adrenaline that always rose around Temari. Memories of that brief kiss flashed in his head. They locked eyes, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Mid-afternoon forest perimeter. In response to the intel, small squads were deployed to Konoha's outer limits. Naruto, accompanied by Sakura and a few other shinobi, patrolled the western forests. The canopy was thick, sunlight filtering through leaves in shifting patterns. Birds rustled overhead, occasionally taking flight in alarm. Naruto caught himself checking every flicker of movement, half expecting a Quincy ambush. But after hours of careful searching, the sun began its descent, and they found no sign of the enemy. Sakura sighed, tension creasing her brow. If they really were here, they might have backed off before we arrived. Naruto leaned against a tree, trying to steady the swirl of frustration. "I hate this feeling. I know they're out there. They're just waiting for an opening." She stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on his chest. "We'll get them. Patience, Naruto." He managed a small grin, covering her hand with his own. "Yeah, just not my strongest trait." Her cheeks colored slightly, but she didn't pull away. The forest around them grew quiet, a lull in the day's tension. He found himself leaning down, capturing her lips in a quick, tender kiss. She returned it without protest, standing on her toes. For a moment, all worries faded. They broke apart when Shikamaru's voice floated over from a distance. "Hey, lovebirds, we've got to move on." Sakura bit her lower lip, smiling. Naruto chuckled, feeling a flush creep up his neck, but no embarrassment. If anything, the possibility of war made these moments of closeness feel even more precious. Evening. A different kind of encounter. Night fell swiftly after the patrol. The streets were lit by lanterns, and a mild breeze offered some relief from the lingering heat. Naruto found himself near the village outskirts again, checking on the guard posts. A flicker of motion caught his attention. He turned to see Temari perched atop the boundary wall, gazing out at the dark fields beyond. She looked thoughtful, her ponytails shifting slightly in the wind. He hopped up beside her, landing lightly. "Couldn't sleep?" She glanced sidelong at him. "Neither could you, apparently." For a moment, they said nothing, just staring out at the moonlit expanse. Finally, Temari broke the silence. "You sure you're okay? You've got a lot of people worrying about you. Hinata, Sakura, Ino, and I suppose that includes me." Naruto leaned against the wall. "I'm doing the best I can. Worrying about everyone else is also wearing me out. But I'll deal." Temari's lips curved in a half-smile. "You're stubborn, at least that hasn't changed." They locked eyes, tension winding tight between them. The memory of their last kiss lingered. The risk, the danger around them, all heightened that rush of attraction. Without fanfare, Naruto stepped closer, braced a hand against the wall behind her, and bent down to capture her mouth in a slow, heated kiss. She responded with a low murmur, grabbing the front of his jacket as her lips parted beneath his. There was an urgency to it, as if they both recognized how fleeting peace could be. When they finally separated, Temeri's breath came fast. She tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, gaze steady. "You know," she said quietly, "you're playing a risky game, kissing so many kunoichi in the same village." He blinked at the blunt statement, a trickle of guilt mixing with a thrill. "Maybe. But I care about all of you." Her eyes searched his, weighing his honesty. Then she released a short laugh. "You're something else, Naruto Uzumaki." Before she could say more, a faint explosion sounded in the distance, somewhere on the far side of the village. Alarms started blaring from the watchtowers. They both snapped to attention. Temari vaulted off the wall, fan in hand. "We'll talk about this later. Let's move." Naruto leapt after her, heart pounding at the prospect of another Quincy attack. Moments later, outer sector of Konoha smoke and dust swirled through the air. A chunk of the outer gate lay shattered. Shadows darted across the rooftops. Naruto skidded to a halt, scanning the area. Shinobi scrambled to respond. Some were tending to injured guards. Others chased after robed figures who seemed to flicker with uncanny speed. He spotted 3 Quincy moving as a coordinated unit, each brandishing a cross pendant. One of them threw out a volley of bright white arrows, pinning a pair of Konoha Jonin behind debris. Naruto clenched his teeth, summoning chakra to his legs for a high jump onto a damaged rooftop. One robed figure noticed and immediately launched a barrage of arrows at him. He felt a jolt of that future sense. Time seemed to slow. He twisted midair, letting each arrow slice through empty space around him. He landed, skidding on Tha Rasengan in one hand. Temari emerged behind him, snapping her fan open with a fierce cry. She unleashed a cutting gust of wind, scattering 2 of the Quincy. The third turned to retaliate, only to find Naruto already sprinting at them. A swirl of white and silver flickered around his free hand. He attempted to form the Reishi bow again, but it sputtered. Gritting his teeth, he abandoned it for the tried and true Rasengan. The shining orb of chakra slammed into the Quincy's chest. With a howl, the figure crashed into the street below, dust pluming on impact. Naruto jumped down after them, hoping to knock them out, but the Quincy staggered upright, coughing blood, and reached for something at their belt, a small medallion. The figure's eyes flared with fanatic zeal. "Long live His Majesty. I won't be taken alive." A flash of pale light, and the Quincy's body dissolved into shimmering particles, vanishing before Naruto could grab them. He ground his teeth in frustration. A second later, he heard shouts from around the corner. Other shinobi were engaging 2 more Quincy. Overhead, an explosion of swirling reishi lit the night sky as an enemy arrow clashed with a wave of Sakura's chakra-infused punch. Naruto sprinted toward the commotion, anxious to see if everyone was okay. He rounded the corner to find Sakura, Shikamaru, and Ino locked in a standoff against 2 Quincy. Sai hovered nearby, an inkbird at the ready. One of the Quincy, a woman with braided hair, sneered. "Your fates are sealed. We will cleanse this world of your kind." Sakura's fists glowed with bright pink chakra. "Come try it." Shikamaru's shadow crept along the ground, weaving around debris, looking for an opening. Ino's eyes were narrowed, her stance ready for a mind transfer if an opportunity arose. Naruto rushed in, sliding beside them. "Where's the third one?" Shikamaru jerked his thumb. "Temari's handling it." A flash of steel soared overhead. Naruto watched as Temari's fan slammed into another Quincy on the rooftop, cutting off their escape route. That Quincy also clutched a cross pendant, but had no time to summon a proper bow before Temari's wind blasts pinned them down. Naruto refocused on the braided Quincy, who aimed an arrow directly at him. A flicker of the future told him to duck. A heartbeat later, the arrow screamed past, scorching the air above his head. He retaliated with a barrage of shuriken, forcing the Quincy to dodge. Ino seized the moment. Shintenshin no Jutsu. She launched her psychic spirit toward the Quincy, aiming to possess them. The braided Quincy, anticipating an attack, spun with almost impossible agility, raising a barrier of reishi. Ino's jutsu bounced off uselessly. She staggered back, stunned. The Quincy followed up with a volley of arrows. Shikamaru's shadow shot forward to intercept. "Too slow," he muttered, vexed as the Quincy once again used that uncanny speed to sidestep. Sakura darted in from the flank, slamming a fist into the ground. Chunks of earth erupted, knocking the Quincy off balance. Naruto capitalized on the opening, racing forward with a glowing Rasengan. For a split second, he caught a glimpse of the Quincy's next move. They would try to create a close-range arrow. He timed his strike accordingly, bringing the Rasengan down before they could finish charging it. The technique connected, and the Quincy was hurled backward into a collapsed wall. Panting, Naruto advanced, determined not to let this one self-destruct. But by the time he reached the debris, the Quincy's body was already dispersing into glowing particles. With a snarl, Naruto slammed a fist against the rubble. They kept taking their secrets with them. Temari and Sai joined them, having forced the final Quincy into the same vanishing act. Shikamaru exhaled a curse under his breath. Not a single capture. Figures. Sakura knelt to check on the injured, who included a few unconscious shinobi scattered around the immediate area. Ino aided her, applying basic medical ninjutsu. Kakashi arrived with more reinforcements moments later, surveying the destruction. Naruto's hands shook. Despite fending off this attack, he felt a hollow frustration. They'd learned nothing new about the Quincy's plans, except that they were more coordinated than before. He stared at the shimmering motes fading into the night sky, remembering that woman's fierce devotion. "We will cleanse this world of your kind." As Kakashi dispersed teams to secure the area, Naruto found himself standing amid the wreckage with Sakura, Ino, and Temari. The weight of the conflict pressed down on all of them. Temari folded her arms, breathing hard. "They're testing us. Seeing how we respond, how strong we are, and especially how strong you are, Naruto." Ino nodded, still pale from the near miss with her mind transfer. "And every time they retreat, it's by turning their bodies into energy or something." Sakura's eyes flicked toward Naruto. "Your powers are growing, but we need more. We need real answers." The night deepened, the roar of flames from the damaged structures casting dancing shadows over the group. Naruto stood with his fists clenched, heart pounding. He felt the faint echo of that foreign energy inside him, the so-called Quincy blood, Yhwach's legacy, and wondered how far he'd have to push himself to protect Konoha. Rain started to fall in a cold drizzle, mingling with the sweat and dust on his skin. He looked up at the dark sky, anger and resolve burning in his eyes. If this was the price of being Son of Yhwach, he would pay it, but he vowed he wouldn't bend to that man's will. He would forge his own path, no matter what destiny or prophecy said. Lightning streaked across the heavens, illuminating the ruined gate and the determined faces of the shinobi gathered there. For better or worse, the Quincy had launched a new conflict, one that spanned beyond the borders of the shinobi world. And Naruto stood at its center, a living nexus of two powers, chakra and reishi, struggling for balance within him. He closed his eyes and felt Kurama's presence, the fox's silent vigilance a steady anchor. The night pressed in, and the thunder rumbled overhead as if heralding a long and treacherous road ahead. In the distance, a single, haunting bell rang through the rain. Shadows flickered, and Naruto sensed the faint traces of Quincy presence dissipating into the darkness. He steeled himself, jaw tight. No matter the hardships, he wasn't alone. Friends, comrades, and those who cared about him, maybe even loved him, surrounded him. That was enough to face whatever might come next. Chapter 3. Chains of Fate. A crimson sunrise spread over Konoha's battered walls, painting the debris of the previous night's battle in shades of copper and rust. Dust still hung in the air where the Quincy had clashed with the village's protectors. Shinobi teams worked tirelessly, repairing structures and evacuating rubble under the watchful eyes of the village's sentries. Despite the destruction, Konoha's resolve was unbroken. Naruto Uzumaki stood near the damaged gate, surveying the aftermath. Sleep had eluded him, again. His heart still pounded with the memory of those robed Quincy dissolving into motes of light. Whatever their mission had been, they'd clearly established one thing. They were coordinated, well-trained, and relentless. And they wanted him. He inhaled, the morning's air tinged with smoke and damp earth. The swirling sense of reishi within him lay coiled in his belly, still new and unsteady, yet undeniably present. Every time he replayed last night's battle in his head, he saw himself conjuring that glowing bow, unleashing an arrow that felt both alien and his own. An anxious voice cut through his thoughts. "Naruto, over here." He turned to see Sakura waving. She was helping heal a line of wounded shinobi propped against a half-collapsed wall. Naruto hurried over, guilt clenching his chest at the sight of so many injuries. A medical team was already on Skabilities ensured efficient treatment. "Hey," he greeted softly, kneeling beside her and a wounded Chunin. The man's right arm was wrapped in blood-stained bandages. Sakura offered Naruto a quick, grim smile. "Most of these guys will pull through, but some have serious burns from those Quincy arrows." Naruto swallowed against the surge of anger rising in his throat. "Need me to do anything?" She shook her head. "It's all right. Shizune and I have them stable, but there's something else I need you to see." She rose, beckoning him past the line of injured. In a quiet corner of the damaged gate tower, two bodies lay covered in white sheets. Fallen shinobi. Naruto's chest tightened. He recognized them only vaguely, but the sight stirred painful memories of war losses. "This is the reality," Sakura said, voice trembling with suppressed rage. "They came here, attacked civilians and our comrades, and then vanished. We couldn't stop them from taking more lives." Naruto exhaled, hot frustration building. "I know, I'm sorry." She caught his gaze, eyes still fierce with unshed tears. "Don't apologize. Just promise me we'll stop them before more people die." He set his jaw. "We will." By mid-morning, the emergency repairs continued, and the Hokage's office bustled with nervous energy. Naruto arrived to find Kakashi, Shikamaru, Sai, and Ino inside. Temari leaned against a corner, arms crossed. Everyone looked up as he stepped in. Kakashi nodded a greeting. "We've mobilized several teams to track Quincy's sightings in the Land of Fire. I've already heard from Sand Village scouts. So far, no solid leads." Shikamaru had a map spread across the desk. "We're picking up faint reishi trails, but they vanish abruptly, probably because these Quincy can move through some sort of spiritual distortion." Naruto's mind flashed to the sensation he'd felt when they retreated, their bodies dissolving. "Like they're slipping through reality itself," he muttered. Ino stepped forward, concern knitting her brow. "I tried using sensory techniques, but it's nearly impossible to lock onto them once they vanish. It's like they stop existing in our world." Temari tapped the butt of her closed fan. "They're definitely not standard shinobi. If we don't adapt quickly, we'll just keep getting blindsided." Kakashi focused on Naruto. "How are you feeling? You tapped into that Quincy power again, right?" Naruto shifted uncomfortably, remembering the unsteady bow in his hands. "Yeah. I fired one arrow successfully, but it leaves me drained. Controlling it's a pain." Shikamaru glanced at Kakashi, then back to Naruto. "We need to accelerate your understanding of this power. If you can fight them on equal ground, we stand a better chance of protecting Konoha." A new voice spoke from the door. "Then maybe it's time to dig deeper into the Uzumaki archives." All heads turned. Tsunade, no longer Hokage but still a force within the village, walked in with a scroll in hand. Her gaze flicked between them before landing on Naruto. "We found another reference in the old Uzushio manuscripts. It might give us more insight." She unrolled the scroll on Kakashi's desk. Faded script and strange diagrams adorned the parchment. "This talks about a hidden chamber in the former Uzumaki stronghold, what's left of Uzushio. It's said to hold artifacts from the clan's earliest alliances. Some are rumored to predate shinobi history entirely." Naruto stared at the swirling symbols. "You think we'll find something about the Quincy there?" Tsunade's expression was guarded. If the Uzumaki clan had contact with Yhwach or his followers centuries ago, there might be records or relics that can help. It's a long shot, but we're running out of options. Kakashi rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Uzumaki territory is partially underwater and heavily trapped. We'd need a specialized team to investigate safely." Shikamaru exhaled. "Still, it might be worth it." Naruto's eyes hardened. "I'll go. If there's even a small chance it'll help me control this power and protect everyone, I'm in." Tsunade nodded. "We'll put together the details. Just be prepared. Exploring those ruins won't be easy. Even the terrain is treacherous." Temari flicked her gaze at Naruto. "I'll come too, if you need the backup. Sand owes you, and these Quincy are obviously a threat to us all." Naruto shot her a grateful look. "Thanks." Kakashi turned to Shikamaru. "Coordinate a small scouting party. Keep it under the radar. We don't want these Quincy catching wind of what we're up to. Shikamaru smirked wryly. Troublesome as always, but sure. Sai studied the scroll. We should leave as soon as possible. The longer we wait, the more time the Quincy have to strike again. Ino touched Naruto's arm gently. Don't push yourself too hard. We'll handle things here while you're gone. Naruto gave her hand a squeeze. A surge of warmth in his chest, another reminder of the connections that fueled him. I'll be careful. Early afternoon outside the village, Naruto, Temari, Shikamaru, and Sakura departed Konoha on foot, heading southeast toward the remnants of Uzushio. Shikamaru had mapped a route that avoided major highways, hoping to dodge Quincy scouts. They traveled swiftly, passing farmland and rolling hills under a bright sun. Sakura kept pace at Naruto's side, occasionally glancing his way. You ready for this? We barely came out of that last fight intact. He offered a confident smile. We'll be all right. Besides, if there's something in Uzushio that can help me figure out this Quincy power, I can't ignore it. Behind them, Temari listened silently, one hand on the strap of her folded fan. She cast Naruto a sidelong look. Since their kiss on the village wall, a certain tension sparkled between them. Yet the seriousness of their mission kept them focused. After hours of travel, they reached a deserted coastline. The air tasted of salt, wind blowing across gray waters. Long ago, Uzushio had stood as a thriving stronghold of the Uzumaki clan. Now only ruins remained, half submerged and battered by storms. They trekked onto a rocky shore. Broken pillars jutted from the water, markers of a collapsed entrance gate. Algae slicked the stones, and the rhythmic crash of waves filled the silence. This place is depressing, Shikamaru murmured, scanning the horizon. How are we supposed to find a hidden chamber in this mess? Sakura held up the scroll Tsunade provided. There should be an entrance that leads to the lower levels, maybe catacombs beneath the old fortress. Naruto stepped forward, gaze fixed on the remnants of an archway. Vines and barnacles clung to the cracked stone, but carved symbols of the Uzumaki spiral were still visible. A wave of unexpected emotion struck him. This was part of his mother's heritage, and now it might hold clues to the father he never knew he had. Let's split up, Temari suggested, scanning the area. We'll cover more ground. Call if you find anything suspicious. They fanned out across the shore, peering into crevices and submerged sections. Shikamaru used his shadow to probe the depths of collapsed corridors. Sakura tested structural integrity of any walls that looked like they might hide an entrance. Naruto, water rising to his ankles, explored a portion of old catwalk. Temari hovered nearby, eyes sharp. At a half-collapsed arch, Naruto spotted a swirling pattern reminiscent of the symbol on Tsunade's scroll. He knelt, brushing away seaweed. Beneath it lay a faintly glowing seal, the Uzumaki crest, pulsing faintly with residual chakra. Over here, Naruto called. The others joined him, and Sakura knelt beside him to examine the seal. This is definitely an old Uzumaki barrier. With enough chakra, we might be able to release it. Shikamaru scratched his head. Go for it. Just don't blow us up. Sakura smirked. Not planning, Naruto. Ready? He nodded, placing his hand over the seal. Sakura did the same. Carefully, they funneled chakra into the pattern. The lines lit up, swirling outward in a spiral. Water around their feet began to recede, as though the seal had activated some ancient mechanism. A grinding noise reverberated through the stone. Slowly, a hidden passageway revealed itself at the base of the arch, leading downward into darkness. A rush of musty air billowed out. Temari whistled softly, peering into the gloom. Looks like we found the basement. Naruto took a breath, heart pounding with anticipation. Let's go. Descending into the ruins, the tunnel sloped deep beneath the coastline. Their footfalls echoed against damp walls etched with faded Uzumaki spirals and archaic script. The air was thick, laced with brine and decay. Shikamaru led the way using a glowing light orb, courtesy of a simple jutsu. Behind him, Temari kept her fan at the ready. The deeper they went, the more complicated the engravings became, some depicting historical scenes, others swirling patterns that mirrored the Quincy cross. Naruto's pulse quickened at that symbol. Why would an ancient Uzumaki site bear a mark so similar to the Quincy sign? Sakura ran her fingers over one carving. I wish we had more time to study these. They look like they tell a story. Maybe old alliances or battles the Uzumaki fought. Naruto swallowed hard. It's possible my clan encountered Quincy centuries ago. Temari's voice echoed in the narrow corridor. Let's stay focused. We don't know if there are traps ahead. They pressed onward. After several twists and turns, the passage opened into a grand chamber that must have once been a ceremonial hall. Pillars, some crumbled, lined the space. The far wall featured a massive mosaic of swirling lines and a central emblem, the Uzumaki spiral interlaced with a cross-like shape. Time and water damage had eroded parts of it, but the overall design was still legible. A hush fell over the group. Shikamaru approached the mosaic, eyebrows knitting. This definitely looks like a Quincy cross merged with the Uzumaki crest. Never seen anything like it. Naruto's gaze locked onto the mosaic's center. Something about it resonated in his chest, as though the design itself was calling him. Sakura scanned the perimeter. I sense strong chakra seals embedded here. We should be careful. Temari pointed at an altar near the mosaic, carved from a single block of stone. Check that out. They moved closer. The altar bore an intricate series of grooves, with symbols hammered into the surface. Shikamaru stepped around it, tapping at the stone. Some sort of puzzle lock? Naruto ran a thumb over the lines. Let me try. He pressed his palm against the altar, coaxing out that mix of chakra and faint reishi within him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the grooves on the altar glowed, the Uzumaki spiral in the mosaic flaring bright. A surge of light radiated from the floor, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When it faded, an opening had appeared in the mosaic, revealing a recess holding a small cylindrical container etched with seals. The container pulsed with energy. Sakura and Temari exchanged quick looks. Shikamaru exhaled. We got past the lock, it seems. But what exactly is that? Naruto carefully lifted the container. It felt warm, an undercurrent of power pulsing through the metal. Could be some kind of relic. He peeled back the top with slow caution. Inside lay a single scroll, tied with a black ribbon. He slid it out, heart pounding. The scroll's surface bore characters unlike typical shinobi writing, sharp lines that reminded him of the Quincy scripts he'd glimpsed on their pendants. Sakura leaned in. Can you read it? Naruto squinted. Oddly, he felt a mental tug, as though the text itself wanted to be understood. Slowly, shapes and syllables clicked in his mind, a language he'd never learned yet somehow recognized. It's instructions. Something about anchoring reishi to mortal vessels. And mention of a figure called the High King who sees all futures. A chill spidered down his spine. High King, Yhwach? Temari's voice was quiet. So the Uzumaki clan knew about him, possibly centuries ago. Shikamaru peered at the text. Anything that helps you control your powers? Naruto scanned further. It talks about a ritual. A way to stabilize conflicting energies, something about chaining fate so it won't shatter the host. He swallowed. Not sure I like the sound of that. But it might be referencing a method to keep my chakra from clashing with the Quincy power. Sakura drew closer. We should bring this back to Konoha, examine it carefully. If it helps you achieve stable control, it's worth a shot. Naruto nodded, carefully resealing the scroll and placing it back in the container. Yeah, let's do that. A faint rumble echoed through the chamber. Temari tensed. Either the tide's coming in, or we've got visitors. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed. Everyone stay alert. Quincy presence in the depths. Before they could retreat, the corridor behind them glimmered with flickers of white light. 3 Quincy figures, clad in pristine cloaks, stepped into the chamber. Their faces were partially obscured by hoods, but Naruto recognized the unwavering intensity in their stances. One of them, a tall woman with a scar across her cheek, spoke. We suspected you might come here, Son of Yhwach. Hiding among old ruins, rummaging through relics of a forgotten clan. Naruto's frustration ignited. How do you know we'd be here? The woman lifted her cross pendant, a faint glow emanating from it. Our king sees many possible futures. He merely guided us to the most likely path you'd take. Sakura and Temari moved to flank Naruto. Shikamaru angled himself behind the group, shadow stretching along the ground. The woman's 2 companions spread out, bows of reishi forming in their hands. Naruto grit his teeth. That sense of destiny Yhwach kept forcing on him was suffocating. I'm done playing cat and mouse. You want me? Here I am. The tall Quincy surveyed him with a hint of curiosity. We're here to test you. If you truly are worthy, the king will call you to his side. If not, we'll erase you and whatever remains of this clan's secrets. A flicker of energy rippled through Naruto. He felt the faint warning of the future sight swirl in his head. He launched himself forward just as a volley of arrows sailed toward him. Sakura dashed to intercept another flurry aimed at Shikamaru, punching the projectiles mid-flight with chakra-infused fists, shattering them in midair. Temari unleashed a gust of wind with her fan, forcing the third Quincy to dodge. Shikamaru extended his shadow, trying to catch at least one of them, but the Quincy moved with that uncanny spiritual speed, slipping free. "TCH, they're faster than before," he muttered. Naruto retaliated with a Rasengan in his right hand, weaving around pillars to close in on the tall Quincy. She formed a slender blade of concentrated reishi from her pendant, blocking his strike in a burst of sparks. Naruto felt the clash reverberate up his arm, a startling mix of friction between chakra and spiritual energy. She smirked. "Good, you're no amateur." With a twist of her wrist, she forced him back, then loosed an arrow at point-blank range. A surge of that future sense told Naruto to drop low. The arrow scorched overhead, singeing the tips of his hair. He lashed out with a sweeping kick, but she vaulted away gracefully, cloak billowing. Meanwhile, Temari pinned one of the other Quincy against a pillar with a ferocious gale. He tried to fire an arrow, but her slicing wind forced him to brace, the projectile veering wide. Shikamaru's shadow snaked in, finally grasping the man's ankles. Shikamaru exhaled triumph. "Got you." "Now," the Quincy hissed, raising a small silver tube and crushing it in his hand. A sudden flashed head, severing Shikamaru's shadow hold. The man lunged away, battered but free. Sakura and the remaining Quincy exchanged blows in the center of the chamber. Every arrow the enemy fired, Sakura punched or swatted aside with raw strength. She dashed in close, pivoting to deliver a punishing strike to the Quincy's gut. He gasped, doubling over. Sakura followed with a roundhouse kick that sent him sprawling. The tall Quincy roared in anger, launching a wave of arrows to cover her ally. Naruto recognized the opening. She was distracted. He gathered that swirling reishi energy in his free hand, calling upon his bow. But it stuttered, flickering weakly. Growling, he shoved the half-formed bow aside and leapt to the battered Quincy's flank with a Rasengan, determined to keep him on the defensive. Not this time, Naruto spat, driving the swirling sphere of chakra into the Quincy's chest. An explosion of debris ripped through the air as the man slammed into the mosaic wall. Water began to seep in from cracks overhead, possibly jostled by the fierce battle. Alarm tugged at Naruto's mind. This chamber could collapse if the fight escalated. The tall Quincy realized her comrade was in real danger. She raised her reishi blade, only for Temari's wind scythe to slice across her side, drawing blood. The woman winced, stumbling. Even so, her glare at Naruto brimmed with unwavering devotion. "Our king will not be denied." Naruto glowered back. "I'm not your king's pawn." A wave of reishi flared around her hand, intensifying into an orb. She hurled it at the mosaic, striking the structure near the battered Quincy man. The entire wall rumbled. Shikamaru hissed a curse. "She's trying to bury us with them still inside." Cracks splintered overhead. Water gushed into the chamber, swirling around ankles, then knees. The tall Quincy seized her bleeding comrade's arm, and together they began dissolving into that eerie glow of reishi. The third Quincy, pinned briefly by Sakura and Temari's combined attack, swiftly joined them in retreat. Within seconds, all three Quincy vanished, leaving only swirling motes of light behind. The mosaic and columns groaned under the sudden inundation of seawater. The floor shook with ominous intensity. Sakura's eyes widened. "We've got to get out, this place is coming down." Naruto clutched the container and scroll. "Then let's move." Shikamaru led them back through the corridor, water surging around their waist. Temari used wind blasts to hold back some of the rushing tide, but it came at them from every crack and fissure. They pressed on, hearts pounding. Behind them, pillars collapsed with thunderous crashes, the chamber caving in. They half swam, half ran through the pitch-dark tunnel. Finally, they emerged onto the coastline, sputtering and soaked. The exit collapsed in a rumble of stone. Seawater poured into the ruins behind them, churning up sand and debris along the shore. Coughing and drenched, Naruto sprawled onto the rocky beach, container still clutched tight to his chest. Sakura dropped beside him, breathing hard, while Shikamaru and Temari stumbled out last, helping each other stay upright. "Everyone okay?" Naruto managed, water dripping from his hair. Sakura nodded, though she looked shaken. "Yeah, we're lucky we made it out." Temari took a steadying breath. "Those Quincy nearly buried us alive." Shikamaru swore under his breath. "But at least we got that scroll, right?" Naruto looked down at the container in his arms. Relief mingled with lingering terror. "We did. Let's hope it was worth almost drowning." Returned to Konoha. By the time they arrived back in the village, night had fallen. Word of the partial collapse of Uzushio's ruins spread quickly among the small circle who knew about their mission. Kakashi awaited them at the Hokage's office, wearing a mask of calm concern. He listened intently as they recounted the Quincy ambush and the near catastrophe in the collapsing chamber. When Naruto handed over the container and scroll, Kakashi's eye flickered with interest. "We'll have the code breakers and sealing experts take a look," he said. "If this can help Naruto stabilize his powers, it might be our best chance." Sakura, still drying her hair with a towel, offered a tired but hopeful nod. "It's definitely tied to the Quincy somehow. We just need to figure out how." Shikamaru sighed. "At least we confirmed the Quincy are monitoring Naruto's every move. We can assume they'll keep trying to test or snatch him." Kakashi's visible brow furrowed. "All right. Good work, all of you. Get some rest. We'll pick this up in the morning." Temari lingered by the door, meeting Naruto's gaze before turning on her heel and exiting with a curt nod. Shikamaru followed with a muttered, "Troublesome," under his breath. Sakura squeezed Naruto's arm gently, then left as well, presumably to clean up and check on her hospital duties. Naruto found himself alone with Kakashi, the container still on the desk between them. A heavy silence settled. Kakashi crossed his arms. "Naruto, I know how overwhelming this must feel. Not only are you the hero who saved the shinobi world, but now you're the target of a war you never even knew existed." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, it sucks. But I'm not backing down, sensei. If these Quincy think they can just waltz in and take me or hurt my friends, they've got another thing coming." Kakashi's gaze softened. "Just remember, it's not all on you. The village stands behind you. Don't bear the entire weight alone." Naruto nodded. "I won't." He left the office, exhaustion seeping into his bones. Outside, the village lights gleamed against the dark sky. A mild breeze ruffled his hair. The constant hum of the reishi inside him felt stronger than ever, perhaps fueled by the adrenaline of the day's fights. Late night Naruto's apartment later, after bathing and scarfing down a quick dinner, Naruto collapsed onto his bed. He stared at the ceiling, swirling with thoughts. The scroll from Uzushio might be the key to bridging chakra and reishi, or at least stopping them from tearing him apart in the long run. But would it also tie him closer to Yhwach's influence? He drifted into a restless sleep, where again he dreamed of a stark white fortress, endless corridors with Quincy crosses along the walls. He walked those halls, hearing the click of his sandals echoing in the emptiness. At the far end, a tall figure loomed. Yhwach, imposing in black robes. "Your progress is intriguing," the man said, voice low yet resonant. "The Uzumaki secrets. Their attempts to shackle your power. It will not deter the inevitable." Naruto bristled. "You don't control me, old man." A faint smirk curved Yhwach's lips. "Stubborn, like your mother. But you bear my blood, my gift. Someday, you will awaken fully, and no seal or ceremony can keep us apart." Anger roared in Naruto's chest. He tried to lunge forward, but his feet stuck to the ground as if trapped in thick tar. Yhwach's silhouette loomed closer, shadows stretching with each step. "Return to me," the Quincy King murmured. "Embrace your birthright, and all futures shall bend to our will." Naruto forced his hand forward. A swirl of chakra formed, clashing with a swirl of reishi. He tried to shape a Rasengan or a bow, anything to fight back, but the energies seethed and sparked against each other, refusing to unite. Yhwach's mustache twitched in amusement. "Still unrefined. But soon, you will unlock the true Almighty. And then you will see there is no path but mine." The dream cracked like glass. Naruto awoke with a gasp, heart hammering. He shot upright, drenched in sweat. His room felt too small, too confining. He pressed a hand to his chest, fighting the panic. He's in my dreams, or maybe I'm in his, Naruto thought, fists clenching. But I won't let him win. Dawn outdoor terrace morning found Naruto on a small terrace overlooking Konoha's roofer. The sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in pastel hues. Though tired, he forced himself to focus, trying to channel Reishi once more. He breathed in slowly, feeling chakras swirl through his coil network. Then, gently, he coaxed that sharper, cooler force of Reishi to join it. The energies quivered like two magnets repelling each other. Grimacing, he persisted, forging them to align in his palms. Gradually, a faint shape of a bow manifested, flickering in and out. When he tried to form an arrow, both the bow and arrow sputtered away. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. "Don't force it," a gentle voice said. He turned to see Hinata approaching. She wore a soft smile, hands clasped in front of her. They hadn't had much time together since the recent attacks. Guilt twinged in Naruto's heart. He'd been bouncing among missions, responsibilities, and uneasy kisses with multiple women. Yet Hinata was always there, quietly supporting him. "Hey," he greeted, letting the partial bow vanish. "Didn't hear you come up." She nodded, stepping closer. "Your chakra signature felt troubled. I figured you could use some company." A wave of relief and warmth washed over him. "Yeah, I've got a lot on my mind." He couldn't help noticing how the early sunlight caught her hair, making her eyes glow softly. The memory of her kisses lingered on his lips. She lowered her gaze, a hint of pink coloring her cheeks. "I know you're juggling a lot, but if you ever need me, I'm here." Naruto exhaled, tension loosening. He reached out, brushing a thumb along her cheek. "Thank you, Hinata." He leaned in, capturing her mouth in a gentle, lingering kiss that melted away his frustration for just a moment. She responded with a quiet sigh, pressing closer. When they drew apart, he rested his forehead against hers, heart full of gratitude. "You always calm me down." She smiled shyly. "I'm glad." Footsteps on the stairway made them separate. A second later, Ino appeared, carrying a small basket of herbs and bandages. Her eyebrows arched as she took in the scene. "Am I interrupting something?" Hinata stepped back with a polite bow of her head, cheeks aflame. Naruto coughed awkwardly. "Nothing, we can't pause for a sec. What's up?" Ino seemed simultaneously amused and slightly flustered. "Kakashi wants us in the analysis room soon. They've started decoding that scroll. I volunteered to grab you." Naruto nodded, heart hammering slightly, caught in the middle of multiple affections. But he refused to feel shame for what he felt toward them. "Right. Let's go, then." He cast a grateful smile at Hinata, who gave a small nod, understanding shining in her eyes. Ino turned to lead the way, and Naruto followed, steeling himself for whatever revelations the scroll held about his Quincy heritage. Analysis Room. Hokage's office annex. The analysis room was a secure chamber lined with shelves of ancient texts, runic diagrams, and various scrolls. Candlelit braziers cast flickering light over the table, where the container and its contents were carefully laid out. Sakura, Shikamaru, and a few specialized seal experts from the Uzumaki tradition hovered over the relic. Kakashi stood by, arms folded. As Naruto and Ino entered, a hush settled. One of the elder seal masters, an older woman with a stern expression, adjusted her glasses. "We've managed to partially translate the scroll's instructions regarding the so-called chain of fate ritual." Sakura motioned them closer, pointing at the open scroll. "It's essentially a method of tethering reishi to one's chakra system, using a special seal that the Uzumaki developed. Supposedly, it allows the host to keep contradictory energies from tearing each other apart." Shikamaru rubbed his temple. "But it's not guaranteed to succeed. The script warns that if the subject's body rejects the seal, it can cause catastrophic damage." Naruto's stomach churned. "Of course there's a risk." The elder seal master nodded. "Even so, it's the best lead we've got. If you can stabilize your Quincy power, you won't be at risk of losing control, and maybe you can harness it fully without Yhwach controlling you." Kakashi met Naruto's gaze. "It's your choice. We won't force you. But if you want to fight the Quincy on equal footing, this might be your shot." Naruto straightened. Despite the uncertainty gnawing at him, he refused to let fear dictate his actions. "I'll do it." whatever it takes. Ino reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder. Hinata, Sakura, and even Tamari, though absent in the room at this moment, flashed through his mind. He had too many reasons to stand strong, too many people he cared about. Shikamaru released a long sigh. All right, then. We'd better prepare. The scroll outlines a procedure that needs to be done in a place of high spiritual significance. One of the seal experts nodded. We have a chamber beneath Konoha with strong Uzumaki inscriptions, left over from Mito Uzumaki's time. We can do it there. Kakashi quickly assigned roles. Sakura, you'll be in charge of medical oversight in case something goes wrong. The seal masters will handle the ritual. Shikamaru, you handle logistics. Ino, help Naruto remain calm. Use your Yamanaka techniques if needed. We'll keep the area secure. Naruto felt adrenaline flood his system. When do we start? Kakashi's gaze was steady. Tonight. Midnight Ritual Chamber. Deep below Konoha lay a hidden sanctum carved with winding Uzumaki spirals. Candles lined the circular walls, their light reflecting off runic seals meticulously painted across the floor. Naruto stood at the center of the chamber, shirt removed to expose the swirl of the seal on his stomach. The air was thick with incense and tension. Sakura, Ino, and two elder seal masters formed a ring around him. Shikamaru and a few Anbu stood guard at the entrance. Kakashi oversaw everything with a solemn air. All right, one seal master said, voice echoing, we begin. They chanted a low incantation in the old Uzumaki dialect, painting fresh lines of ink across Naruto's chest and arms, connecting to the swirling seal at his navel. Each stroke crackled with faint chakra. Naruto felt his own energy stir, and beneath it, the sharper pulse of Reishi quivered. Steady, Sakura whispered, standing just outside the circle with hands glowing faintly in healing chakra. Don't fight the process. Naruto nodded, swallowing. He closed his eyes, focusing on his breath. The chanting rose in intensity, swirling around him. The seals on the floor lit up, bright arcs of red and white creeping along the lines. He felt heat spreading across his body, like a brand searing into his flesh. Suddenly, an internal pressure surged. His chakra and reishi collided violently, spinning inside him. He groaned, muscles tensing. Scenes flashed in his mind. Yhwach's fortress, the shinobi war, his mother's face, the nine tails. A fierce jolt tore through him, dropping him to one knee. Sweat streamed down his face. Sakura stepped forward in alarm. Naruto. One of the elders raised a hand. No, we mustn't stop now, or it could kill him. The energies must fuse or be forever broken. Sakura bit her lip, uncertain. Ino clenched her fists, stepping closer. Naruto, stay with us. She closed her eyes, channeling a subtle Yamanaka technique to calm his mind, sending a gentle wave of reassurance. Naruto's vision blurred. Part of him wanted to scream, to tear the seal from his skin, but he forced himself to stay still. He felt Kurama's presence inside him, growling. Damn it, brat, Kurama snarled in his mind, don't you dare die. Naruto's heart thundered. He embraced the chaos, pushing chakra and reishi together, imagining them as two rivers merging into one unstoppable current. He pictured the swirling Rasengan in one hand, the ephemeral Quincy bow in the other, forcing them into a single shape. Pain roared through him, sharp vision. And then, like threads snapping into alignment, something shifted. The tension inside him eased, replaced by a blazing warmth that raced through his veins. The chanting in the chamber crescendoed, then broke off in a final, resonant note. The seals on the floor glowed white-hot, then faded to a faint glimmer. Naruto collapsed onto his hands, panting. The room spun. He heard Sakura's frantic footsteps, felt Ino's hands on his shoulders. Is he? Sakura started. The elder seal master examined the still glowing marks across Naruto's chest. The chain seal is in place. His energies, they're stable. Naruto coughed, struggling to speak. I'm okay. Sakura exhaled in relief, applying a soothing touch of medical chakra. You idiot, that was intense. He forced a grin, lifting his gaze. Kakashi stood at the circle's edge, eye full of pride. Shikamaru let out a quiet, thank goodness, while the Anbu guards relaxed. Ino, tears of relief shining in her eyes, brushed damp strands of hair off his forehead. Naruto tried to stand. Ino and Sakura supported him. His body felt like it had just run 100 marathons, but a strange clarity underlay his exhaustion. The two previously clashing energies in him no longer wrestled, they swirled in harmony. He closed his eyes, reached inward, and felt the reishi respond, stronger and more cooperative. A trembling laugh escaped his throat. He had done it. Amid the flickering candles and the hush of the underground chamber, Naruto realized that one part of Yhwach's hold over him just got a lot weaker. Moments later, outside the chamber once stable, Naruto stepped out of the sanctum to find Temari waiting in the torchlit corridor, arms crossed. Her eyes flitted over him, noting his exhausted stance. She set her jaw. "You look like hell." He laughed wearily. "Thanks. Good to see you too." Temari's expression softened. "I heard you'd be doing some crazy Uzumaki ritual. Wanted to make sure you made it out alive." Naruto gave her a lopsided grin. "I appreciate the concern." She huffed, stepping closer until their faces were inches apart. "Next time, don't nearly die without telling me first." Her voice wavered with an undercurrent of genuine worry. He brushed the back of his fingers across her cheek, ignoring the looks they might be getting. "I'll try not to. Promise." A soft flush tinted her cheeks, but she didn't move away when he leaned in. Their lips met in a brief, warm kiss that conveyed relief more than anything else. When they parted, she exhaled, tension lifting from her posture. "Glad you're still breathing, hotshot," she murmured. He managed a tired chuckle. "Me too." The moment ended when Shikamaru stuck his head out from the ritual chamber's entrance. "Hate to break up the romance, but Kakashi wants an update, Naruto." Temari rolled her eyes, giving Naruto a playful shove. "Go on." He let out a breath, stepping back inside. Now that the chain seal was in place, the real work would begin. Learning to wield his Quincy powers without fear. Yet even as he took his first steps with this new stability, a faint whisper of Yhwach's voice echoed in the back of his mind. "There is no escape from fate." Naruto clenched his fists. "We'll see about that." Outside, the night pressed on. The stars glimmered overhead, shining on a Konoha that prepared for the next inevitable confrontation. And at the center of it all stood Naruto, son of two worlds. Shinobi and Quincy, determined to forge his own destiny, no matter how many chains of fate tried to bind him. Chapter 4. The king's summon. The midday sun bore down hard on Konoha's training grounds. Dry heat shimmered in the air as Naruto stood in the center of a wide field, eyes fixed on a target dummy at the far end. His shirt hung off to one side, revealing the fresh Uzumaki seal patterns etched on his torso. Evidence of the chain of fate ritual that still tingled with new energy. He inhaled, focusing on the swirl of chakra in his stomach. Through concentration, he coaxed forth the sharper, cooler sensation of reishi. The two energies rippled, no longer clashing as before but still tentative, like unfamiliar partners in a dance. Slowly, he raised his hand, letting ghostly strands of light emerge. A faint, bow-like form began to coalesce, much more stable than it had been days ago. Sakura, standing nearby with arms crossed, observed him with vigilant eyes. "Keep it steady, that's it," she encouraged. Naruto kept his breath level, pulling back on the forming bowstring. This time, the energy didn't flicker out. It held, a pale arrow of reishi taking shape. He released. The arrow streaked through the air, slamming into the target with enough force to blast it apart in a burst of straw and cloth. He let the bow dissolve, exhaling. For a moment, triumph brightened his features. This was a far cry from the faltering attempts before the chain of fate ritual. The seal was working. "Not bad," said Temari, who stood a few steps behind Sakura, tapping her folded fan against her shoulder. "Looks like all that near-death drama in the ritual chamber actually paid off." Naruto grinned at her teasing. "I'd prefer less drama next time." Sakura stepped closer, scanning his vitals with a subtle surge of medical chakra. "Your pulse is a bit elevated, but you don't seem hurt. Any pain?" "Just the normal muscle strain," Naruto replied, rolling his shoulders. He felt sweat dripping down his temples, way easier than before. Temari flicked her gaze over the swirled tattoos. "As long as you don't blow yourself up, I'd say we're making progress." Naruto wiped his brow. He appreciated their support. Sakura's unwavering encouragement and Temari's frank, occasionally snarky, brand of reassurance. He also sensed the lingering spark of tension between him and each of the kunoichi he'd grown close to. Though it kept things complicated, it also fueled his determination. He refused to let the Quincy or anyone else tear apart the world he cared about. Shikamaru approached from a distant tree line, hands shoved in his pockets. You're getting more consistent. That'll be crucial if you plan on confronting them again. Naruto nodded, recalling how the Quincy seemed to show up at every opportunity. Yeah. I'm tired of waiting for their next move. Before Shikamaru could respond, Sai appeared in a swirl of dust. His normally placid demeanor was marred by urgency. Kakashi wants you all at the Hokage's office. Now. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Quincy trouble? Sai shook his head. Not exactly. We received a strange message from the Quincy realm itself. They hurried across the village rooftops under the midday sun, weaving past the remnants of ongoing repairs from the prior Quincy attacks. The once shattered gate had mostly been restored, and villagers moved about with renewed determination. Yet an undercurrent of anxiety remained. Everyone knew the Quincy threat was far from over. When Naruto, Sakura, Temari, and Shikamaru entered the Hokage's office, they found Kakashi conferring with Tsunade and a handful of Anbu. On the desk lay a small, glowing orb of spiritual particles, flickering faintly like a ghostly flame. Kakashi turned at their arrival. Good. You're here. This orb appeared just beyond the village perimeter. Our sensors detected Quincy Reishi. It seems to be a communication device. Tsunade leaned forward, arms folded. We've activated it carefully. No traps so far. Naruto's pulse quickened. A message from them? Now? Kakashi extended his hand. Stand back, everyone but Naruto. The device specifically resonates with his chakra and Reishi signature. That set off alarm bells, but Naruto stepped forward regardless. Let's see what it says. He reached out, letting his fingertips brush the orb. Instantly, a resonant hum filled the room. The orb glowed brighter, swirling with a faint silhouette. Naruto sensed an unnerving jolt of recognition of Yhwach's power. A male voice boomed from within the orb, hollow yet heavy with authority. Naruto Uzumaki. Heir to His Majesty, Yhwach. Your presence is requested in Silburn, the Quincy stronghold. Appear willingly, or our forces will retrieve you by any means necessary. A hush fell. The silhouette flickered, suggesting a tall figure with a cross emblazoned on a cloak. The voice continued. His Majesty allows you time to consider. But do not tarry. Each day you delay, the balance of realms will tip further. Comply, or watch your shinobi world burn. Then, with a final flash, the orb dimmed, crumbling to ash that scattered across the desk. Nobody spoke for a moment. Anger twisted Naruto's gut. They want me to just walk into their stronghold? Tsunade's lips tightened. They're brazen, threatening war if you don't comply. Sakura clenched her fists. This must be a trap. They know you're stronger now, so they're trying a direct approach to rattle you. Shikamaru sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. From their perspective, it's a win-win. If Naruto refuses, they can attack. If he goes, they can corner him in their territory. Naruto's hands curled into fists. I won't let them blackmail me, but maybe this is our chance to meet them head-on. I'm sick of hiding. Temari studied him with guarded concern. You can't just stroll into enemy territory alone. They'll outnumber you 1,000 to 1. Kakashi nodded. Agreed. We need a plan, a way to protect Naruto and also gather intelligence. We can't risk an all-out war if we can avoid it. Tsunade exhaled, glancing at Kakashi. You're the Hokage, so the final call is yours. Kakashi's gaze fell on Naruto. They gave us time. We'll use it. First, we figure out if there's a safe means of infiltration, or if we should be preparing to repel another Quincy invasion. For now, nobody's leaving Konoha. Naruto wanted to protest, but he understood the logic. Fine. But if they come knocking again, I'll be ready. Later that day, village streets, Naruto left the Hokage's office with his mind churning over the ultimatum. He meandered through Konoha's bustling streets, trying to clear his head. Shops and food stalls tempted him with bright signs, but he had no appetite. The threat from the Quincy realm loomed like a dark cloud. He found himself nearing a familiar flower shop. Ino's place. He paused outside, inhaling the faint perfume of lilies. The sign read, Yamanaka Flowers. The door propped open for a breeze. Inside, he saw Ino restocking vases, her expression distracted. He entered quietly, and she glanced up, blinking in surprise. Naruto? Hey, he said, forcing a small grin. Just needed a breather. She left her vases on the counter, stepping around to meet him. Concern flickered in her teal eyes. I heard about the Quincy's invitation. Naruto's jaw tensed. They want me to walk into their stronghold or face another war. Kakashi won't let me go, and he's probably right. But I hate waiting. Ino reached for his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. You're doing the right thing. We barely know what they're capable of inside their own domain. He felt a wave of warmth from her touch, momentarily easing the knot in his chest. Yeah, but it still sucks. Her gaze flicked to the shop door, then back at him. With one quick motion, she took his hand and led him behind a display of tall ferns, out of sight from any passers-by. There, she turned to face him fully. We can't solve everything in one day, she said quietly, but maybe we can ease the tension. Before he could reply, she cupped his cheek, pulling him down into a swift, comforting kiss. The scent of flowers and the warmth of her lips spread through him, momentarily chasing away thoughts of war. He responded, arms circling her waist, deepening the moment. A muffled sound of pleasure escaped her as she pressed closer. When they separated, breath mingling in the small space, Ino's cheeks were flushed. Naruto, you're not alone in this. We're all with you. He traced a thumb over her lower lip, nodding. Thank you. A bit of color still high on her cheeks, she glanced toward the shop's entrance. If you ever need to talk, or anything else, you come straight here. Got it? He grinned, a genuine smile. Got it. Nightfall, training field. Moonlight bathed the village in silvery light as Naruto returned to the training field for a final practice session. The day's events had sharpened his resolve, and while the village dozed, he needed to test the limits of his stabilized Quincy chakra powers. He formed a dozen shadow clones, each tensing in anticipation. All right, he called out to them. Let's push this new synergy as far as we can. They rushed him. Normally, he'd rely on Rasengan or Taijutsu, but now he tried to integrate the Reishi bow. With his main body, he summoned the luminous bow and fired arrow after arrow at the oncoming clones. Some arrows flared with orange sparks, where his chakra bled into the Reishi, providing extra concussive force. The clones popped in bursts of white smoke. Others made it close enough to engage in hand-to-hand. Naruto pivoted, half charging a Rasengan in his offhand while keeping the bow in the other. The synergy was still shaky, and the Rasengan's swirl caused the bow to flicker. He gritted his teeth, forcibly stabilizing them both. He hammered one clone with the Rasengan and fired an arrow at another, taking them out simultaneously. Wind gusted across the field, dispersing the last puffs of clone smoke. Only 2 clones remained. They converged from opposite flanks, forcing Naruto to spin and shoot in quick succession. The first arrow missed, but a future sight tingle warned him of the second clone's lunge. He twisted, conjuring another arrow mid-motion. It slammed into the clone's chest, dispersing it. The field fell silent. Naruto breathed heavily, sweat glistening on his skin. His heart pounded with both fatigue and exhilaration. If these powers kept improving at this rate, he might be able to confront Yhwach on equal footing someday. That was the hope. A rustle of leaves made him whirl around. Hinata emerged from behind a cluster of trees, Byakugan deactivating as she approached. She wore a soft smile that tried to hide her concern. That was impressive. Naruto relaxed. Didn't realize I had an audience. She walked closer, her steps light. I wanted to check on you. You've been pushing yourself more than usual. He shrugged, letting the bow vanish. Need to be ready. They can attack any time. Hinata drew near, touching his arm gently. You won't help anyone by burning yourself out. He sighed. I know, but after that message, it's like I can't rest until I'm strong enough to face them. She studied him in the moonlight, eyes reflecting worry. Then she rose onto her toes and placed a tender kiss on his cheek. You're already strong, Naruto-kun. Don't lose sight of who you are. He smiled, a weariness in his eyes. Thanks, Hinata. She slid her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. He held her close, the hush of the night wrapping around them. The uncertain future loomed, But this moment, warm, comforting, reminded him of the life he fought to protect. He couldn't let the Quincy tear it all away. 2 days later, the dimensional rift Dawn arrived with an ominous hush. Kakashi stood atop Konoha's wall, accompanied by Naruto, Sakura, Shikamaru, Temari, Ino, and several others. A swirling distortion marred the horizon, like a tear in the fabric of reality. Pale reishi bled through, forming a gateway. From that opening stepped a single Quincy figure, robed in white, silver hair gleaming. He raised his voice so it carried across the plain. Naruto Uzumaki, His Majesty offers you this path to Silburn. Enter willingly, and no harm will come to your village. Refuse, and we will unleash squads tensed along the ramparts, weapons at the ready. Kakashi's gaze cut to Naruto. They'd spent the last days debating a strategy. Infiltration seemed madness, yet an all-out war was riskier still. Naruto steeled himself, stepping forward. If I go with you, how do I know you won't just invade anyway? The Quincy's expression revealed little. Our king's decree is absolute. If you enter Silburn to speak with him, no direct assault will occur, unless you force our hand. Temari hissed under her breath. Shady. Shikamaru muttered, it's a hostage scenario. They won't strike as long as they have Naruto under their watch. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Fine. I'll go. A collective protest rose from the group behind him. Sakura grabbed his arm. Naruto, no. He covered her hand gently, nodding. We discussed this, remember? If they're gonna push for war, the least I can do is stall it, maybe stop it altogether. And, I need to face Yhwach eventually. Ino's lips parted with worry, but she gave him a subtle nod, recalling their plan. Don't do anything reckless. Temari's eyes blazed. We'll be close by. If they try something, I'm coming after you. He managed a confident grin. Thanks. Then he looked to Kakashi, who gave him a curt nod, silent approval that the infiltration attempt was the best move. The rest of the shinobi squads watched as Naruto leapt down from the wall, striding across the plain toward the glowing rift. The Quincy waited impassively. When Naruto drew close, the man produced a silver medallion. He murmured something under his breath, and the dimensional tear widened. Step through. Naruto glanced back once, his friends, his home, all behind him. Then he steeled his resolve and walked forward, disappearing into the portal with the Quincy behind him. The rift sealed shut, leaving the shinobi world behind. Arrival in Silburn, he blinked, adjusting to sudden, blinding whiteness. A vast fortress of ivory towers and pale stone spread out before him. Quincy soldiers, hundreds of them, lined the walls, each wearing a distinctive cloak trimmed with cross motifs. Spiritual energy pulsed in the air like electricity. The silver-haired Quincy ushered him into a grand courtyard, where a path of gleaming white steps led to an imposing throne room. Do not wander, the man warned. Silburn is not hospitable to outsiders. Naruto squared his shoulders. Got it. As they walked, he couldn't help noticing the eyes of countless Quincy warriors tracking his every movement. Some gazed at him with curiosity, others with outright contempt. He felt an urge to conjure his bow but fought it down, aware that any sign of aggression might spark a battle he was currently unprepared for. They reached the entrance to a grand hall, guarded by Quincy in ornate uniforms. The silver-haired escort gestured for Naruto to follow inside. After crossing a polished marble floor, Naruto came face to face with a figure seated on a raised dais. Yhwach himself. He was tall, clad in black robes etched with arcane symbols, his thick mustache giving him a stern, regal look. The air around him felt heavy, as if gravity itself bowed in his presence. Naruto's heart pounded, the standoff in his dreams now reality. My son, Yhwach greeted, voice echoing, you've come. Naruto bit out, don't call me that. A flicker of amusement crossed Yhwach's features. Still defiant, I see. He rose from the throne with a slow, deliberate motion. I've observed your growth. Your newfound mastery of reishi is commendable. But your loyalty remains uncertain. Naruto forced himself to stand tall. I'm not here to be your soldier or your heir. I came to stop you from invading my home. Some of the Quincy in the hall bristled at his insolence, but Yhwach merely smiled thinly. So you believe you can end this with words, or perhaps with force? Naruto clenched his fists. if that's what it takes. Yhwach stepped down, drawing closer. You have your mother's stubbornness. But you carry my blood, the power to rewrite futures. Imagine what we could accomplish together. The shinobi world is small, its chakra a limited resource. We Quincy harness the infinite reishi of existence itself. Naruto's thoughts whirled. He recalled the times the future sight had saved him, the bow he was still learning to wield. He also remembered the devastation the Quincy had wrought on Konoha. I don't want conquest. All I care about is protecting my friends. Yhwach regarded him with cool detachment. Your friends will perish in the cosmic struggle if you don't embrace your birthright. Soul Society, the shinobi realm, all worlds. They tremble before the war to come. He extended a hand. Stand at my side. You will reign over entire dimensions as my chosen heir. Naruto's stomach turned. No way. A low murmur rolled through the assembled Quincy. Some glared at Naruto, offended by his rejection. Others seemed fascinated, awaiting Yhwach's response. Yhwach sighed, as though disappointed but not surprised. Then prove you're worthy to choose another path. He gestured, and from behind two massive pillars, a pair of Quincy warriors emerged. Their spiritual pressure was immense, oppressive. This is Hashwalth, Yhwach said, nodding at a blond man with a composed, regal demeanor. And that is Berenice, pointing to a tall woman with braided hair, cold eyes brimming with lethal confidence. You will fight them here and now. Should you survive, I may consider sparing your village and hearing your arguments. Naruto's pulse raced. He'd expected a confrontation, but not so abruptly. Still, if it meant preventing an immediate war, he had no choice. Fine, he snapped. Bring it. Hashwalth inclined his head politely, forming a gleaming bow of reishi. Berenice smirked, brandishing a reishi saber that glowed with an uncanny aura. Around the throne room, Quincy onlookers stepped back, making a wide circle. Yhwach reseated himself. Begin. Clash in the throne room. Hashwalth moved first, releasing an arrow so swift it blurred through the air. Naruto dodged, feeling that flicker of future sight guiding him. He summoned his bow in mid-dive, returning fire with a swirl of reishi-laced chakra. Their arrows collided, generating a concussive wave that rattled the marble columns. Berenice closed in from Naruto's blind spot. He caught a glimpse of her next strike in a hazy premonition, twisting just in time to avoid her blade. The edge hummed past his ribs, close enough to scorch his jumpsuit. Snarling, he countered with a Rasengan in his free hand. She parried it with a flick of her saber, sparks flying where chakra met reishi. Hashwalth seized the opening, launching another barrage. Naruto glimpsed the threads of possibility. If he jumped left, he'd be cornered by Berenice's slash. If he jumped right, he'd be tagged by Hashwalth's arrow. But the new synergy in his blood let him bend those threads. He feinted left, then pivoted right at the last second. Both attacks whiffed by inches. Tension crackled through the hall. Quincy onlookers watched intently, some with grudging admiration for Naruto's agility. Yhwach observed from his throne, expression inscrutable. Naruto skidded across the polished floor. He pulled back on his bowstring, forging two arrows at once. He fired them simultaneously at Hashwalth. The blonde Quincy's eyes narrowed. He summoned a barrier of shimmering reishi, blocking one arrow and deftly stepping aside from the other. The deflected projectile ricocheted, almost catching Berenice in the side, but she twisted away fluidly. Berenice snarled. Impressive, but you can't defeat both of us alone. She flung herself forward in a flurry of saber strikes. Naruto parried with his bow, which flared each time metal met condensed reishi. He felt the chain of fate seal on his chest burn with exertion as he struggled to keep up. Her speed was extraordinary. Sensation at his back, Naruto broke away from Berenice, flipping backward. He flung a trio of chakra-laced kunai at the blonde Quincy, forcing him to dodge. Immediately, Berenice pounced again, capitalizing on Naruto's diverted attention. A future sense jolt warned Naruto to drop. He ducked under the saber slash, then hammered a rising uppercut. Berenice blocked with her forearm, reishi armor glinting. She smirked, driving a knee into Naruto's gut that sent him staggering. Pain blossomed, but he fought through it, conjuring a swirling Rasengan. He slammed it forward. She attempted to dodge, but the explosion of chakra clipped her arm, ripping her cloak. She hissed in pain, blood staining the fabric. Yhwach capitalized on Naruto's partial distraction, launching another precise arrow. This time, Naruto felt the arrow slip past his reflexes, grazing his shoulder in a burst of searing agony. Gasping, he reeled. Spots danced in his vision. The blow wasn't mortal, but the spiritual burn lingered. "Yield," Yhwach said coolly, keeping his bow trained on Naruto. Naruto gritted his teeth, ignoring the blood staining his sleeve. Not happening. He inhaled shakily, focusing on that chain seal inside him. The synergy between chakra and reishi sparked, and he let the energies swirl together. Another arrow formed on his bowstring, this one crackling with greater intensity than before. Like a half-formed Rasengan fused with reishi, he fired. Yhwach's eyes widened. He reinforced his shield, but the arrow exploded on impact, blasting him backward. Berenice, still reeling from her own wound, was forced to shield herself from the shrapnel-like burst of spiritual shards. Naruto panted, dropping to one knee. Blood trickled from his shoulder, but a flicker of triumph glinted in his eyes. He'd injured them both. The onlookers muttered in surprise. Still, he was outnumbered, battered, and Yhwach sat unperturbed on his throne. In the hush, Yhwach's deep voice cut through. Enough. Yhwach and Berenice straightened, though they remained tense. Naruto remained on one knee, chest heaving. Yhwach rose slowly, robes whispering across the floor. "You have skill, my son. Perhaps even the potential to stand among my elite guard one day, but you refuse my offer?" Naruto forced himself to his feet. "I do," he rasped, voice thick with pain. A dark hush settled, the gathered Quincy waiting for their king's decree. Yhwach's eyes glimmered. "Very well. Then I shall show you the consequences of your defiance." The shinobi Quincy standoff to Naruto's shock, Yhwach thrust out a hand. The space before him trembled, forming a vision-like portal. Through it, Naruto saw glimpses of Konoha, its familiar streets and newly repaired walls. A wave of dread washed over him. Was Yhwach showing him the future? The image shifted to reveal groups of Quincy soldiers marching on the village perimeter, reishi bows raised. Explosions rocked the gates. Shinobi rushed to defend. Naruto recognized some of his friends in the fray. Sakura, Ino, Temari, Hinata, even Kakashi. The scene looked dire, as if the Quincy had caught the village by surprise. "No!" Naruto shouted, stumbling forward. The portal vanished like smoke. Yhwach's voice was calm, almost gentle. "That is but one future I can invoke if you will not align yourself to my will." Naruto's blood pounded in his ears. "You monster!" Yhwach raised a hand, and Yhwach stepped forward, pointing an arrow at Naruto's chest. Berenice flanked him, saber gleaming. The tension in the throne room reached a breaking point. But just then, an alarmed shout echoed through the ivory corridors. A Quincy guard burst in. An intrusion. Shinobi have breached the outer perimeter. Yhwach's gaze snapped to the guard. "Impossible. How?" The guard looked frantic. "We do not know. They used some technique to cloak themselves, then forcibly broke through a reishi barrier. They're heading this way." Naruto's heart leapt with sudden hope. Could it be? Unexpected reinforcements. A swirl of wind blasted open the doors at the far end of the throne room. Standing there, panting from the strain of forced entry, was Temari, fan at the ready. Behind her, Shikamaru and Sai emerged, flanked by a small squad of Konoha's best, Enbu included. They must have used Sai's ink illusions and Shikamaru's strategic cunning to infiltrate unnoticed until the last moment. "Naruto!" Temari shouted, eyes scanning his injuries. "Guess you could use a hand." He barked a half-laugh of relief. "You guys are crazy, but thanks." Yhwach's gaze hardened, and murmurs of outrage rippled among the Quincy. Guards moved to block the intruders, raising bows. Shikamaru's shadow expanded across the marble floor, hooking the ankles of two Quincy at once. Sai's ink beasts soared overhead, tangling with more. Temari unleashed slicing gales that forced the archers to scatter. Yet the Quincy forces were immense. More rushed in from adjoining corridors, forming a circle. The shinobi group pressed forward, determined to reach Naruto but dangerously outnumbered. Shikamaru frowned, sweat beading at his temple. "We can't hold out long, Naruto. We either get you out, or..." No one leaves without my command, Yhwach intoned. His spiritual power flared, saturating the air like a crushing weight. Temari and Shikamaru winced, shaken by the density of Yhwach's aura. The Quincy King raised his hand. Eliminate the intruders. Quincy elites advanced in unison, forming a deadly formation. Dozens of arrows charged with reishi lit the chamber with an eerie glow. Naruto felt dread coil in his gut. No matter how strong his new powers, the shinobi were outmatched in this domain. A single impulsive plan crystallized in his mind. He turned to Yhwach, voice raw. Let them go. They don't need to die here. Yhwach gazed at him coolly. Why would I grant that? Naruto clenched his fists. Because he swallowed, heart pounding. I'll consider your offer. A stunned silence fell. Even Hashwalth and Berenice looked taken aback. Shikamaru's eyes widened. Naruto, what? Naruto refused to look at his friends, knowing he couldn't let them be slaughtered. Call off your soldiers. Let them leave safely, and I'll hear what you have to say. Yhwach's lips curved into a satisfied smirk. Very well, soldiers, stand down. The Quincy parted, though clearly on high alert. Temari and Shikamaru stepped closer to Naruto, disbelief in their eyes. You can't be serious, Temari hissed. We came to get you out, not watch you sign up with them. Naruto lowered his voice. I'm not signing up, but we can't fight an entire fortress. If I buy you time to retreat. Shikamaru glared, expression tense. You plan on stalling them while we escape? Then you'll be stuck here alone. Naruto's jaw clenched. Better me than all of us. I'll find a way out, or a way to stop them from the inside. Sai's typically calm face showed rare turmoil. Naruto. He forced a grin. Listen, I appreciate you all. Tell Kakashi I'll do whatever it takes to protect the village. Then he looked at Temari, eyes softening. Take care. Temari's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked like she might protest further, but Shikamaru tugged her arm. We have to trust him. If we stay, we all die. Reluctantly, she relented, eyes blazing with anger at the Quincy as she turned away. The infiltration team withdrew, and the Quincy did not pursue. Naruto watched them vanish through the corridor, heart twisting. He had to cling to the hope that he could unravel the Quincy threat from within. Yhwach's voice reverberated. Wise choice. Naruto rounded on him, fury simmering. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not yours. But I won't let my friends be slaughtered. Yhwach merely spread his hands. Actions speak louder than words, my son. Come. There is much you must see. Imposed stay in Silburn. The FRN was a surreal blur. Quincy guards escorted Naruto to a private chamber within the fortress. A place that felt more like a gilded prison. The walls glowed with an otherworldly light, reishi lamps flickering in silver sconces. Though no chains bound him, Quincy soldiers stationed themselves outside the door, making it clear he couldn't just walk out. Hours passed. Servants brought food and fresh clothes, but Naruto barely touched either. His mind spun with worry for Konoha and frustration at his situation. He tried forming a plan. Could he sabotage something critical? Could he glean intel on the Quincy's war strategies? Maybe find a way to open a rift back to the shinobi realm? As night fell, if such a place even had a true night, he paced the chamber restlessly. The air vibrated with distant reishi flows, reminding him of the fortress's alien nature. He reached inward, pressing a hand to the chain seal on his chest. The synergy of chakra and Quincy power responded, but he felt stifled by the oppressive aura of Silburn. A knock on the door startled him. He braced, half expecting an enemy. Instead, Hashwalth stepped inside, calm and dignified. His Majesty requests your presence. Naruto exhaled sharply, following the man through winding corridors. White pillars soared overhead, accented by stained glass windows depicting Quincy crosses. They finally emerged into a smaller hall, less grand than the throne room but still impressive. Yhwach stood at the far side, gazing out a tall window into the pale sky of this realm. Hashwalth bowed, leaving Naruto alone with Yhwach, who turned. You've had time to reflect. Naruto's jaw tightened. Enough time to know I still won't join you. Yhwach clasped his hands behind his back, stepping closer. You cling to a narrow vision, shaped by the shinobi. Yet fate spins threads far beyond your village. The Soul Society, The realms of hollows, the entire tapestry of existence. It is all in flux. I don't care, Naruto said coldly. I only care about protecting the people I love. Yhwach arched a brow. Then protect them at my side. I will show you how to wield the Almighty to reshape the destinies that would threaten them. Naruto glared. You threaten them just as much as anyone else. A faint sigh. You have your mother's temper, but you also have my blood. I can see the potential swirling in you. I give you one final chance, Naruto. Accept my training. Pledge yourself to the Quincy cause. In time, you may even hold dominion over the shinobi world, if you wish it. Revulsion twisted Naruto's stomach. No, the corners of Yhwach's mouth drew down. Then you condemn them to conflict. You will watch your friends die in the storm that follows. Are you ready to shoulder that guilt? Naruto felt anger flare. He fought the urge to lunge, remembering how easily Hashwalth and Berenice had overpowered him. I'd rather die free than live as your puppet. Yhwach studied him for a silent moment, then turned to the window, voice heavy with disappointment. So be it. You will remain here until I deem otherwise. Should I see reason to unleash my forces on the shinobi realm, you will witness it firsthand. And when that tragedy unfolds, perhaps then you will beg for my power to save them. Naruto shook with rage. I'll find a way to stop you. Without another word, Yhwach gestured for Hashwalth, who appeared once more, guiding Naruto away. The heavy doors sealed behind them. Godlike resolve the halls echoed with each step, and Naruto's thoughts churned. He was trapped in the heart of Quincy territory, surrounded by enemies. Yhwach loomed as a father figure he never wanted, a godlike ruler with the power to break entire worlds. Yet Naruto refused to break. He was Uzumaki. He was a shinobi. He had endured war and carried a demon fox inside him. He would endure this, too. Hashwalth led him back to the same chamber, but before leaving, he spoke softly, as if offering advice. His Majesty is not heartless. If you show him your resolve and learn what the Quincy truly stand for, you might find a middle path. Naruto scowled. I'm not interested in your illusions of nobility. You all attacked my home, killed my comrades, threatened everyone I care about. Middle path my ass. Hashwalth's gaze was inscrutable. War spares no one. And the Quincy's war is far older than your shinobi alliances. Reflect on that. He departed, door clanging shut. Naruto sank onto the edge of a marble bench, breath ragged. He pictured Sakura and Hinata, Temari and Ino. He recalled Kakashi's trust, Shikamaru's unwavering loyalty, Kurama's sarcastic but steadfast presence. Would they plan a rescue? Or a defense if the Quincy launched another incursion? He rested a hand against the chain seal on his chest, allowing a trickle of reishi to flow. The bow manifested fleetingly in his palm, then dissolved. A stubborn determination flared in him. If Yhwach wanted him to bend, he'd be sorely disappointed. Naruto closed his eyes, steeling himself for whatever came next. He vowed that no matter how hopeless it seemed, he would find a path back to Konoha, back to those he loved, and bring an end to Yhwach's ambitions. He was Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, the son of Yhwach, and a shinobi who forged his own fate. Nothing in any realm could shatter that resolve. Chapter 5. War of the godlike pale daylight filtered through the high windows of Silburn's fortress halls, casting stark shadows across the marble floors. Naruto stood near one of those windows, looking out at the strange sky of the Quincy realm. Days had passed since he'd agreed to remain in Yhwach's domain, under guarded watch, in exchange for letting his friends return safely. He couldn't help clenching his fists at the memory of their forced departure, especially Temari's anger and Shikamaru's worry. He wondered if Konoha had fortified itself for the inevitable strike. He wondered if Hinata or Sakura or Ino were losing sleep over him. The swirling tension in his chest nearly suffocated him. An armored Quincy soldier stationed at the corridor stepped forward. You, His Majesty summons you again. Naruto turned, face hardening. Let's get this over with. He was ushered to a broad hallway that led to a chamber he had yet to see, a place with tall, cathedral-like ceilings, luminous pillars, and rows of Quincy scripts engraved in the walls. In the center stood Yhwach, regal in his black robes. A silent assembly of Quincy elites hovered on the periphery, bows at their backs or sabers sheathed at their sides. Naruto felt the tension thicken. All right, he muttered. What's the grand event? Yhwach's voice resonated. You remain defiant. Yet your power grows daily, fueled by anger and desperation. He gestured to the lines of Quincy around them. We are on the cusp of advancing into the shinobi realm with overwhelming force. The question is whether you will command that force. He paused, eyes narrowed, or be crushed by it. Naruto grit his teeth. You think I'll help you invade my home? A low murmur rustled among the Quincy. Yhwach lifted a hand for silence. I offer you a demonstration of what is to come. My forces march soon, and you shall witness our unstoppable might. Then, when you see how futile your shinobi allies' resistance is, you'll have a final choice. Accept your destiny as my son, or watch everything burn. Naruto's eyes blazed. If you hurt Konoha, Yhwach's cold chuckle echoed. You will do nothing until I release you to do so. Hashwalth. Hashwalth stepped forward, expression grave. Yes, your majesty. Prepare the troops. We advance on the shinobi realm at dusk. A wave of dread swept Naruto. He knew he had to act soon, somehow warn Konoha. He forced calm into his voice. You're making a mistake. Yhwach turned away. Take him back to his quarters. Naruto felt two Quincy guards seize his arms, leading him off before he could. Hashwalth and Berenice gathering with others, barking orders about the upcoming invasion. He seethed inwardly, mind racing. If only I could open a portal or sabotage theirs. But the rifts required specialized Quincy techniques, or so he'd gleaned. He needed a bigger advantage, something that could turn the tide. Planning an escape back in the marble-walled chamber that served as his gilded prison, Naruto paced, curses tumbling through his thoughts. He recalled the times he'd summoned the slightest trace of Kurama's presence for guidance, or to glean some intangible insight. Perhaps now was the time. He sat, crossing his legs, closing his eyes. The moment he tuned into his chakra, he felt Kurama stir within his mindscape. You've been quiet, Naruto muttered inwardly. Kurama's deep growl filled his senses. This place stinks of foreign energy. It's been difficult to concentrate. Naruto exhaled. Well, we're about to have bigger problems. They're mobilizing to invade Konoha. We have to get out, but I don't see an exit. Kurama's reply crackled through him. Then maybe we make one. The seals on your chest keep your Quincy powers stable. Why not push them to break open a rift? Naruto frowned. You mean forcibly replicate their portal technique? Something like that, Kurama said. You have the ability to shape reishi now. If you can harness enough, maybe you can tear a hole in space like they do. It won't be easy, but you've pulled off crazier stunts before. Naruto's heart thumped with renewed hope. I'll try. He opened his eyes. First, he had to slip past the guards. The bold attempt that same evening, with the Quincy forces preparing to launch an invasion, Naruto bided his time. The guards outside his chamber changed shifts, leaving a brief window of fewer eyes. The corridor had a wide balcony overlooking a lower courtyard. From up here, Naruto heard the rumble of Quincy soldiers marching in formation, boots pounding the pristine floors. He felt dread, but also an opening. If chaos erupted, he might seize that moment to vanish. He formed a shadow clone in a dark corner, and with a nod, the clone henged into an imitation of one of the Quincy guards. A moment later, it strode out into the hallway, saluting the real guard. I have orders from Hashwalth to move the prisoner. The unsuspecting guard blinked. Strange timing, let me confirm. But the clone moved fast, punching the guard in the gut, sending him crumpling. The clone gestured to Naruto, who burst out, adrenaline surging. He leapt over the unconscious guard and dashed down the corridor. Within seconds, alarms blared. The ruse wouldn't last long, and the fortress was crawling with Quincy. But Naruto's speed, honed through shinobi training, let him dodge or knock aside several soldiers as he barreled toward an open terrace. Need an open space, he thought, scanning for a vantage that overlooked the fortress edge. Quincy archers took up positions along parapets, firing arrows that whizzed dangerously close. Naruto ducked behind a stone column, forming quick-hand seals for multiple shadow clones. Cover me, he shouted. The clones sprang out, engaging the archers in a frenetic skirmish. Naruto reached the terrace ledge, heart pounding. Below, countless Quincy stood in neat ranks, preparing for the invasion. No turning back. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the synergy of chakra and reishi inside him. With trembling concentration, he visualized the rift technique, how the Quincy tore open dimensional space. He recalled the feeling of reishi swirling in the air whenever they traveled. He pressed a hand forward, letting energy flood his palms. He could sense the structure of space in this realm, the barrier separating Silburn from the shinobi world. He poured more chakra, more reishi, into a swirling vortex just beyond his fingertips. At first, only sparks and hisses of light. Then, a faint circle of distortion appeared, unstable and warping. An arrow nearly grazed his shoulder, forcing him to dodge. Another clone tackled the archer from behind, sacrificing itself in a puff of smoke. Naruto roared, funneling raw willpower into that swirling distortion. It grew. Chunks of the terrace crumbled under the intense spiritual pressure. Quincy soldiers shouted in alarm. A swirling gateway about Naruto's height expanded, flickering like it might collapse any second. That's enough. A furious voice barked. Berenice appeared, reishi saber drawn. She lunged for Naruto, aiming to interrupt his technique. But with one final push, Naruto stabilized the portal just enough to leap through, ignoring the slash that burned across his ribs in passing. Pain roared up his side, but he clenched his jaw, diving headlong into the swirling rift. In a flash of blinding white, he vanished from Silburn. Returned to the shinobi world, Naruto tumbled out onto soft grass under a twilight sky, chest heaving. He'd emerged in a forest clearing somewhere in the land of fire. The portal behind him crackled, then snapped shut. For a moment, he lay there, adrenaline wearing off. He pressed a hand to his side where Berenice's blade had cut him, grimacing at the searing pain. At least I'm back. Somewhere in the distance, he heard voices. Shinobi on patrol? He mustered his strength, stumbling toward the sound. Stop right there, came a sharp challenge from behind thick foliage. Naruto coughed. It's me, Naruto. Two Konoha Chunin emerged, eyes wide. Naruto Uzumaki? He managed a crooked smile, relief washing over him. Quick, get me to the village. We've got a war coming. They rushed him to the village walls, where guards recognized him instantly. Word spread like wildfire. Soon, Kakashi, Sakura, Ino, Temari, Shikamaru, and others were hurrying to meet him at a makeshift medic station just inside the gate. Sakura's eyes went teary with relief. She performed a rapid diagnostic jutsu on his side. Idiot, you're lucky this cut isn't deeper. He tried to grin through the pain. Nice to see you too, Sakura-chan. Temari stood nearby, arms crossed to hide her shaking. She muttered, I thought we'd lost you there. Ino moved closer, carefully not to jostle the medics but letting her hand rest on his arm, eyes shining. Hinata, arriving moments later, stood at his other side, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. He felt their combined care and swallowed down emotion. Kakashi's voice was urgent. Naruto, what happened? Are they about to invade? Naruto forced himself upright despite Sakura's protests. Yes. Yhwach was mobilizing an entire army. They might appear any day now, any moment. We have to get everyone ready. Shikamaru's expression darkened. Troublesome. So it's all or nothing. Naruto nodded, jaw set. We have to stand together, every village, every ally. They're coming. Rallying the shinobi world, the next hours and days blurred in a surge of frantic preparation. Kakashi sent envoys to the other great nations, urging them to dispatch reinforcements. From the Sand Village, Gaara answered with an immediate troop deployment. The Hidden Cloud, Mist, and Stone each rallied shinobi to Konoha's cause, wary of this unknown, Quincy threat. Teams worked tirelessly erecting barrier seals, layering the village perimeter with advanced detection. Naruto conferred with experts on how to repel spiritual attacks. They concluded that synergy between shinobi chakra and Uzumaki sealing arts might neutralize reishi infiltration, at least partially. In the midst of the chaos, Naruto found stolen moments with each of the women who had become precious to him. One evening, he and Hinata walked the ramparts, her hand clasped in his. Another night, he and Ino snuck a quiet moment in the flower shop while reorganizing medical supplies, sharing a tender kiss amid the fragrance of blossoms. Sakura checked on his injuries daily, and occasionally they lingered in close conversation, a deeper warmth glowing between them each time their gazes locked assist from Suna's command outpost. But whenever she was in Konoha, she found him. Sometimes just to scold him for risking his life, often ending with a fierce hug or a quick, heated kiss under the cover of night. His heart felt torn in multiple directions, yet also full. Their acceptance of his feelings, and of each other, buoyed him through the relentless tension of impending war. The final onslaught one crisp morning, the alarm bells tolled. A swirling distortion spread across the sky above Konoha's main gate, much larger than any Naruto had made. Quincy's spiritual pressure poured out in suffocating waves. The defenders lined the walls, Naruto at the forefront, flanked by Sakura, Ino, Temari, Hinata, Shikamaru, and Sai. Thousands of shinobi and allied forces stood ready behind them. A massive portal stabilized, revealing the stark white architecture of Silburn beyond. Emerging from that gateway marched row upon row of Quincy, led by Hashwalth, Berenice, and other stern-faced elites. Floating behind them, like a looming shadow, was Yhwach himself. He hovered a few feet off the ground, black robes billowing. His gaze swept across the shinobi defenders without a trace of fear. "It begins," Kakashi murmured, stepping up next to Naruto. Naruto clenched his fists. The chain seal on his chest hummed with urgency. Kurama's voice rumbled inside him. "Ready, brat?" "Yeah." Naruto took in the sight of Konoha's loyal ranks. He wasn't alone. This was his home turf. Yhwach's voice boomed. "Naruto Uzumaki, last time, you fled. Now, we finish this. I offer you one final choice. Kneel at my side, or watch your world crumble." Naruto's response was a flash of raw fury and protective resolve. "I'm done listening to your threats, old man." Thunder roared in the sky as if heralding the clash of gods. Yhwach raised a hand, and the Quincy forces advanced. Shinobi unleashed ninjutsu in waves, fire dragons, water torrents, wind sides. Quincy countered with volleys of reishi arrows, each strike rattling the walls. In the maelstrom, Naruto summoned a swirl of chakra in one hand and reishi in the other, forging a combined arrow that glowed with swirling patterns. He loosed it, blasting a swath of Quincy foot soldiers off their feet. Sakura and Hinata tag-teamed, one delivering bone-crunching strikes, the other unleashing a flurry of gentle fist combos. Ino coordinated with Shikamaru, using mind transfer illusions to disrupt Quincy lines while Shikamaru's shadows incapacitated them. Temari's fan conjured raging gusts that tore through the white-cloaked ranks. Sai's ink creatures soared overhead, harrying archers on rooftops. The allied shinobi armies pushed forward, refusing to yield an inch. Berenice spotted Naruto and lunged to duel him once more, reishi saber crackling. "We have unfinished business, brat." Naruto recalled the slash she'd inflicted on him back in Silburn. "Bring it." She slashed in a blur, but Naruto's future sense flickered. He sidestepped, slamming a Rasengan into her flank. She staggered, teeth bared. He drew back, conjuring his reishi bow, launching a point-blank arrow that crashed against her saber. The explosion sent them both skidding. She spat blood. How did you get so strong?" Naruto's voice was lethal calm. "I fight for my friends, that's all." He flickered forward, unleashing a devastating combo. A chakra punch that stunned her, followed by a reishi arrow that pierced her side. With a scream, she dropped to her knees, trying to form a last-ditch attack. Naruto swatted her blade away and hammered her with a final Rasengan. She crumpled, reishi dissolving around her. Elsewhere, Shikamaru and Temari cornered a squad of Quincy elites. Temari's wind scythes forced them into Shikamaru's carefully laid shadows. Stranded, they fell under swift strikes from allied shinobi. Hashwalth engaged Kakashi, their clash a flurry of lightning-fast sword and arrow counters. Kakashi's Sharingan tracked each blow, while Hashwalth displayed a calm precision that matched the 6th Hokage's skill. Sparks rained each time their weapons met. Despite their fierce defense, the sheer numbers of Quincy pressed the shinobi back, inch by inch. Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, another wave of reinforcements arrived. Gaara's sand shinobi soared in, controlling torrents of desert sand that swallowed Quincy formations. The Raikage himself blitzed across the battlefield, pummeling hapless archers with lightning-charged fists. The Mizukage and Tsuchikage orchestrated large-scale jutsu from the flanks, carving channels through the enemy lines. Even so, Yhwach remained above the fray, observing with an air of detachment. Finally, as if deciding he'd seen enough, he descended to the battlefield, stepping onto open ground. Shinobi parted, fear and awe rippling through them. Naruto felt a spike of dread. The Quincy King was the true threat, overshadowing even his massive army. Their gazes locked. Yhwach extended a hand. Your final chance is now, Naruto. Naruto responded by forging a monstrous arrow of Reishi chakra synergy, swirling with orange and white energy. He aimed directly at Yhwach's heart. I'm ending this. He fired. Godlike showdown. Yhwach exhaled, lifting one hand. In a surreal display of power, the arrow froze mid-flight, its entire existence flickering. Like time itself had paused around it. Then it dissolved into nothing. Naruto staggered, stunned. What? Yhwach's eyes gleamed. The Almighty sees all possible futures and selects the one that ensures my victory. Your arrow never had a chance. A hush fell across the battlefield. Shinobi gaped at the display. Even those fighting in the distance slowed, sensing a colossal shift in the balance. Naruto grit his teeth, pressing a hand to the chain seal at his chest. Then I'll just have to break your future. He closed his eyes, drawing on everything he'd learned, every ounce of synergy in his body. Chakra and Reishi surged in tandem, swirling around him in a storm of bright orange and pale white. The Nine Tails' presence thundered in his veins, merging with the chain of fate seal, forging a new level of power. When he opened his eyes, a faint cross-like glimmer danced over his pupils, layered atop his usual blue. He felt a flicker in the air. Like the edges of time and possibility were within his grasp. Yhwach cocked an eyebrow. Ah, so you've awakened a fraction of the Almighty as well. Let's see how far you can push it. They launched at each other, the ground shattering under their feet. Yhwach swung a Reishi sword that seemed to distort reality with each slash. Naruto dodged and countered with the synergy bow, unleashing volley after volley of fused arrow Rasengan blasts. Some of them winked out mid-flight, undone by Yhwach's future manipulation. But others found cracks in Yhwach's chosen path. Naruto's awakened sense letting him guess precisely where Yhwach's power might fail. Explosions rocked the battlefield. Buildings crumbled, the earth split. Shinobi and Quincy alike scattered to avoid the cataclysmic clash. Yhwach growled, blindsided by a strike that clipped his shoulder. Naruto pressed the advantage, rushing in with a swirling orb of raw Reishi chakra shaped like a giant Rasengan, pulsing with the cross pattern. He slammed it into Yhwach's guard. A thunderous blast rattled the entire area. Yhwach slid back, boots carving trenches in the ground. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, but he smiled, a terrible grin. You truly are my son. So much potential. But you are not yet unstoppable. He thrust out his hand, black spiritual energy congealing around him. The air rippled with ominous power. Let me show you the difference between us. Dark Reishi flared, forming multiple arrow constructs that encircled Naruto from all sides, each humming with lethal potency. Naruto's future sight flickered. He saw no safe path. He braced himself, weaving as many defensive jutsu as he could muster. At the last second, NT erupted from above. Sasuke Uchiha dropped in, Rinnegan flaring. With lightning speed, he extended a Susanoo arm that shielded Naruto from the arrows. Don't hog all the glory, Dobi. Naruto's eyes widened. Sasuke. Sasuke scoffed. I got word. Figured I'd see what all the fuss was about. With Sasuke's intervention, Naruto recovered. They exchanged a quick nod, rivals turned allies once more. Yhwach's gaze flicked to Sasuke. Another gifted with ocular powers. But you'll fare no better. Sasuke's Rinnegan glowed. We'll see. He unleashed an Amaterasu blaze, black flames scorching the air. Yhwach's Reishi barrier flickered, containing most of it. Naruto seized the opening, lunging with a Reishi-laced Rasengan. Yhwach blocked, but the combined onslaught pushed him back. The entire battlefield watched in awe as the unstoppable force of Yhwach clashed with the unstoppable will of Naruto, and now Sasuke. Climax. Father versus son. A crater formed around them, arcs of energy crackling. Yhwach's voice boomed over the chaos. This is futile, Naruto. Even with your friend's help, you cannot overcome the Almighty. Naruto exhaled sharply, ignoring the searing pain in his limbs. Yeah? Watch me. He centered himself, forging a final technique. Channeling Kurama's chakra and the Quincy reishi simultaneously, he shaped a gargantuan arrow overshadowed by swirling Rasengan-like spirals. Sasuke, recognizing Naruto's plan, created a corridor of distorted space with his Rinnegan to funnel the attack. Yhwach roared, calling upon the fullness of the Almighty to nullify it. In that instant, Naruto's future sight awakened again. He glimpsed a fraction of a second ahead, saw Yhwach's chosen future, and bent it. Time seemed to slow as Naruto fired. The arrow spiral hammered into Yhwach's chest, bypassing the manipulated timeline for just a hair's breadth. The resulting detonation lit the sky in a blinding flash. Yhwach bellowed, staggering as fractures of reishi splintered off his form. He spat blood, eyes wide in disbelief. How did you? Naruto, lungs burning, advanced. I'm not just your son. I'm a shinobi of Konoha, and I never give up. With that, he poured his entire essence, chakra, reishi, his raw determination, into one last blow. The shockwave thundered outward, flattening everything in its radius. Yhwach's aura imploded, and he crashed to the ground in a bruised, bloodied heap. For a frozen moment, the entire battlefield went silent. Quincy and shinobi alike stared, disbelieving. Naruto stood over Yhwach, chest heaving, body trembling from exhaustion. Yhwach looked up, his once imposing glare dimming. The black-robed king coughed wetly, struggling to speak. You would spurn your birthright, to stay among these mortals? Naruto's eyes hardened. They're not just mortals. They're my family, my friends. That's something you never understood. Yhwach reached a hand up, as if to grasp Naruto's ankle. Strength failed him. Dark reishi flickered away, leaving him pale. Then, with a heavy sigh, his eyes closed. The Quincy King's body dissolved into faint motes of spiritual light, scattering like dust on the wind. A hushed awe rippled across the battlefield. The Quincy troops, leaderless and shaken, began to lower their weapons. Some tried to retreat through half-formed portals. Others simply knelt in surrender, uncertain what to do. Aftermath and Resolution Kakashi, battered but alive, approached with the other cages. Relief and astonishment colored their faces at the sight of the defeated Quincy King. Gaara's eyes flickered to Naruto with something like pride. The allied shinobi let out a collective roar of victory, though many bore injuries or mourned fallen comrades. Naruto swayed, nearly collapsing. Sasuke rolled his eyes but supported him. You look like hell, Dobi. Naruto managed a shaky grin. Thanks for the backup. Sakura ran up, activating healing jutsu. Don't you dare pass out yet. She pressed a glowing hand to the deep cuts across his chest and arms. We need to stabilize you. Ino hurried over as well, half laughing, half sobbing in relief. You're insane, Naruto. She bent down, pressing a trembling kiss to his forehead. He smiled weakly, letting the medics tend to him. Hinata arrived just behind them, gently taking his hand. Her eyes brimmed with concern as she checked for further injuries. Tamari joined a moment later, face streaked with dust, relief and lingering adrenaline in her expression. She set her fan aside, leaning in. You sure know how to cause trouble, but you did it. Naruto's face flushed, overwhelmed by their presence and comfort. His chest felt heavier remembering those who died in this war. But he clung to the joy of survival, of having protected what mattered. Shikamaru and Sai regrouped with them, assessing damage. Most Quincy forces were scattering, though a few pockets refused to surrender. Konoha's shinobi locked them down. Gaara's sand subdued the remaining elites. Through the haze, Naruto noticed Hashwalth, kneeling among a cluster of wounded Quincy. The blond man raised his eyes to Naruto, silent acceptance in his gaze. The war was over, their king was gone. Naruto's injuries pulled him under, and he let darkness claim him. Epilogue. Bridging two worlds 2 weeks later, the sun shone brightly over Konoha as final repairs neared completion. The allied shinobi forces had dispersed back to their villages, each carrying stories of the mysterious Quincy threat, and how Naruto Uzumaki had vanquished a godlike king. In a quiet training field, Naruto tested his new equilibrium. His injuries were mostly healed, though faint scars from Yhwach's clash remained. He formed the reishi bow with a sense of bittersweet clarity. The chain seal on his chest no longer burned. Instead, it thrummed gently, signifying that he had tamed both powers, chakra and Quincy heritage. He fired an arrow into a target. A crisp impact. His aim was steadier than ever. He let the bow vanish, exhaling. Even if Yhwach is gone, the Quincy still exist. Part of him wondered if they could find a peaceful path forward. If he might help them forge a new purpose now that their king was gone. A breeze stirred. Then, gentle footsteps approached. Hinata, Sakura, Ino, and Temari arrived together. They'd grown accustomed to these small gatherings, each supporting Naruto in their own way, and growing more comfortable around each other. Sakura folded her arms, smiling softly. Practicing again? You need rest. He shrugged with a teasing smirk. Gotta keep these powers in check. Ino teased, don't blow up the training field, hero. She stepped close, brushing his cheek with the back of her fingers. Still can't believe you fought that monster alone. Hinata nodded, eyes shining with quiet admiration. We're all grateful you're back. Temari, arms crossed, gave a wry grin, and as obnoxious as ever. Naruto laughed, heartfelt. He stepped forward, catching Temari by surprise in a quick, bold kiss. She returned it, trying not to smile too widely. Then he turned to Ino, brushing her lips in a warm, gentle moment. She responded with a content sigh. Next came Sakura. He pulled her in, ignoring her mock protest, and felt her melt into his embrace. Finally, he took Hinata's hand, leaning in for a tender kiss that made her cheeks glow pink. Each kiss was a promise, an acknowledgement of the bond they shared, unique, complicated, but undeniably real. They'd walked through darkness together, and he wouldn't hide his feelings for them any longer. When they parted, a hush of understanding settled. The four kunoichi exchanged fleeting, knowing smiles. They might not have a conventional arrangement, but they cared for Naruto, and he for them. They chose to navigate that path on their own terms. Shikamaru arrived late, rolling his eyes at the display of affection. You guys are shameless. Anyway, Kakashi wants to see you, Naruto. Naruto. Some new mission? Shikamaru shrugged. Maybe. Could be about the remnants of the Quincy. We'll find out. Naruto glanced at the four women, heart swelling with gratitude. He nodded, steeling himself for whatever came next. If bridging the gap between Quincy and Shinobi was possible, he'd try. If not, he'd defend Konoha from any new threat. That was his pledge. He walked with his friends toward the Hokage's office, the sunshine warm on his face. Gone was the boy who once felt alone in the world. In his place stood a man who had faced destiny itself, faced his father, the Quincy King, and forged his own path. His name was Naruto Uzumaki. Godlike, some might say. Confident, a little reckless, but guided by an unbreakable will. Even if fate twisted and turned, he would stand firm, forging alliances with love in his heart and power in his soul. And beyond the horizon, the next chapter of his life awaited. Both Shinobi and Quincy, bound by the legacy of a son who refused to yield to prophecy, who chose hope over despair, unity over conquest. He smiled to himself, striding onward, harem in tow, ready for anything. To be continued.